Mic check 1 2 1 2. Mic check 1 2 1 2. If anyone in the chat can hear me, just push 1. All right, got a confirmation from the chat. Thank you for the confirmation. Welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is open chat number 43. Might be 44. Please hit the like button as you come in, share the video if possible. Also hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those posted on the community tab. If you want to engage in the discussion, there'll be a link in the chat for you to click on. When you click on the link, make sure you raise your hand so that one of us can acknowledge you and advance you to the panel. All right. Give another 30 seconds for people to come in. All right, let me take a few seconds to give people a heads up and a shout out. Paul Blunt, PCU, keep it techie, peace. Zone, a salute to you. Rashawn Waiters, what's going on? Jay Green, hello. And Willie Little John, hey. So I'm not going to waste too much time. For those of you who do not follow the Prophet of Thought, the Prophet of Thought had a debate last night with between Brother Moses of the B1 Network and Mr. Fantastic. And I thought it was a pretty interesting debate. Not as structured and clean as what I would have preferred it to be, but it was actually an interesting dialogue more than it was a debate. And the conversation was, or the debate was supposed to be structured around, are Blacks competing in America? I wish that there was a little bit more backstory to it, but for all intents and purposes, that was the subject title, the topic title, and the debate title. And I think that the debate was, or what's supposed to be a debate, it was actually interesting. Our Brother Moses had a very clean perspective with a PowerPoint presentation, although I do question the numbers, but that's neither here nor there because I think the debate was not properly structured. So with that being said, are Blacks competing in America? And we have gone over numbers through our economics live streams, as well as our market outlook and industrial outlooks on the Space and Technology Hangout, as well as prior to the Black Brain Trust, there's a channel called Business Wealth Power between anti-gravity and complex design. So they have been looking at this type of stuff long ago. And we cover a lot of articles from reputable sources that say what's the trajectory for markets, emerging technology, as well as economics and finance, right? So we see things from a different perspective. I think that what happens in a lot of times is everyone wants to defend the flag of a hashtag without actually understanding the intricate details that go behind a lot of these type of things, including policy. And so the debate between Mr. Fantastic and Brother Moses, I don't want to comment on the characterization of each of those gentlemen, but what I will say is that I didn't think they made a whole lot of traction between either one of them. I thought that I was feeling a little bit lost in terms of where they were going with these questions as well as these responses. So I want to cover it from the Black Brain Trust standpoint on, are Blacks competing in the fourth industrialization of Western society, as well as the global economy. But we'll focus on just the Western society as a whole, as a micro focus right now, because the macro focus would be too broad to actually speak upon, because Black Americans or these hashtags do not go outside of U.S. territory. And so what I will do is pull up a few articles. All right, let me grab a couple of these articles. All right, just give me a few seconds. Let me pull up these links. All right, so let me share my screen real quick. So African-American workers could be badly hit by automation. Is there a solution? So this was posted October 2019. Let me expand this out. Automation and AI are coming for jobs, and African-American workers are particularly at risk. African-American workers will have higher rates of job displacement than the general US population due to automation, according to a new report by the consultancy McKinsey. There is an elevated risk to the African-American workforce to modernization, automation, and the global shift that exists in the modern economy. McKinsey partner and report co-author Jason Wright tells Business Insider. While 22% of all jobs in total workforce will get disrupted, meaning either killed or replaced by low-paying work, it's 10% higher for the African-American workforce. That means 4.5 million Black jobs could be displaced by 2030 without any intervention, according to McKinsey. African-American workers are at greater risk for job loss due to being overrepresented in the jobs that will face the most cuts after AI, artificial intelligence, automation take over, like office support, secretary, fast food, and service workers, and mechanics, and other practitioners of production work. About 34% to 36% of jobs in those three sectors will get disrupted, McKinsey says. The disproportionate impact of automation could exacerbate the already widening racial wealth gap. The wealth gap between the median Black and white families in the US has jumped $54,000 since 1992. White Americans own disproportionately more homes and hold less student debt than African Americans. factors that can be traced to historic redlining, discrimination, and job hiring. College education and gender will all impact how severely Black Americans will face job loss, McKinsey finds. While the general Black population is 10% more at risk for job disruption, the numbers jump to 30% for African American men without a college degree. In fact, the researchers estimate that 28% of jobs held by Black men without a college degree will get disrupted by automation and AI by 2030. All right, so these are the numbers right here. Interestingly, while Black men face greater risk of job disruption from AI, Black women will see relatively fewer job losses. Black women might lose jobs at a lower rate, not only compared to Black men, but also when compared to white and Asian American of all genders. Black women are currently overrepresented in jobs that will see growth in the next decade, like nursing assistants and home health aides. However, Black and Hispanic women are still paid the least out of every racial gender pairings. Wright said, understanding the unique ways automation will impact different racial gender groups will allow for a better understanding of which policies to advocate for. Black men might need more job reskilling training to prepare for job disruption, while Black women might need better access to education to attain higher paying work. There's a real benefit to the evolution the economy is going through, he said. Being smart, especially as a person of color, on the unique risk to you is helpful. So lower education rates also lead to a lot more disruption. And so the question of whether or not Blacks are competing in America, it begs the question from a fourth industrialization standpoint, they are not competing. And this article actually points or makes the point that most Blacks, especially Black men, are not prepared for forced industrialization at all. So when the question comes about when it comes to competing, who are they competing against? If anything, Black men have a closest competitor is the Black woman in this aspect, because their jobs are disproportionately impacted by automation and artificial intelligence, whereas Black women are in positions where Black men probably should be, due to the fact that there's a difference in markets that each gender enrolls in or partakes in. And so because of this, when we ask the question, or the question that gets asked about whether or not Blacks are competing, I will use this as one particular source. What's going on, Josh?
What's up, Mike? How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, Wody. You have anything you want to add to this?
No, I just want to say I agree, man. I saw the debate as well. And it was, I got to give kudos to Brother Moses. He came in with, the information prepared for the debate. You know what I'm saying? And I actually didn't expect that, but nothing against him or whatever, but, that's just what a debate should consist of, in my opinion, especially me coming in with the information instead of more opinionated statements, in my opinion. So, but I agree with this article. I read this. Did you post this before?
No, this was, there was another article that was similar from Wired, I think. It's either Wired or a Fast Company, but they're all pretty much saying the same thing.
Yep.
They're all pretty much saying the same thing, that Blacks will be disproportionately impacted by artificial intelligence and automation in the next 10 years. So starting from today, you have until 2030, which is 10 years from now, just beyond Trump's, the next president, you will see severe impacts of up to, let me make sure I get the numbers right. 34 to 36% of those jobs in those three sectors will get disrupted. So, which exacerbates the poverty issue, right? So, and Black men are more likely to be disproportionately impacted by this, and they're actually right about this. I've said previously in the past that Black women will be disproportionately impacted by this, and I stand by that because of the numbers. But in context here, Black men will suffer greatly because not just because they're Black men, but because they lack a social network. They're not. A lot of guys I know are not on LinkedIn for whatever reason. They're just not there. And if they are there, they're throwing up gang signs on LinkedIn. I find that to be interesting. But yeah, network wealth is a determination of your actual wealth. And so because of that, because if you lack a broader social network, you're going to be disproportionately impacted by job opportunities not being available to you. And so whether it's Black men or Black women, if Black men, the article that we read yesterday in our addendum said that Black male income per capita is actually declining, and because it's declining, it disproportionately impacts the community as a whole. Because if he's not bringing in, then you have your income per capita to go down significantly. So when people say Black people are competing as a whole, you might want to check your statistics, because not today in this fourth industrialization, starting January 2020, everything going forward, anything that happened prior to that does not matter. It just doesn't matter anymore. I don't care what happened in 1800 or the 1920s, or the 1960s. That does not matter. It's, what matters going forward is fourth industrialization. If you are not competing in fourth industrialization, you are screwed. You are very much screwed. So let me jump to this next article from Inside Higher Education. Early departures. A new study shows that Latinx and Black students leave STEM majors at far higher rates than their white peers. This is February 26, 2019. College administrators have long debated how to attract minority students, Black and Latino men and women, to science and technology fields. It turns out these students already have an interest in those fields, at least according to the new study, but Black and Latino students enrolled in STEM programs are either switching majors or dropping out of college at higher rates than their white peers, the study concludes. So we talked about whether or not Blacks are competing right now, currently at the moment. This article is saying otherwise, that Blacks, more importantly, Blacks instead of Latinos, Black are having a hard time remaining enrolled in sort of these STEM programs. I suspect a lot of them are computer engineering and electrical engineering, because those are some of the hardest. Those are two of the hardest. The study was published this month in the journal Educational Researcher. The authors are Catherine Regal-Crum, associate professor in the University of Texas at Austin's Department of Curriculum and Instruction. Her colleague, Yasmin Izari, an assistant professor of African and African diaspora studies, and Barbara King, assistant professor of teaching and learning at Florida International University. Using federal data from the National Center for Educational Statistics, the researchers look at more than 5,600 students, Black, Latino, and white, who attend college for the first time in the 2003-2004 academic year. They include students who started at four-year institutions and those who began at two-year colleges and transferred to four-year institutions. The researchers found that there was little difference at the beginning of the students' studies. About 19% of the white students declared as a STEM major, compared to 20% of Latino students and 18% of Black students. But the majority of the minority students left the major at far higher rates than their white students. About 37% of Latino students and 40% of Black students switch majors versus 29% of white students. And 20% of Latinos and 26% of Black STEM majors left their institutions without earning a degree. The research showed only 13% of white STEM majors dropped out. So 26% of Black STEM majors left their institutions without earning a degree. Okay, so now you're talking about whether or not Blacks are competing in the fourth industrial age. I don't know. These numbers say otherwise. Anything that you knew prior to the administration, the Obama administration, doesn't matter anymore. What matters is everything fourth industrialized. What are we talking about? Fourth industrialization, people, process, and technology. Where devices are connected, autonomous vehicles, drones, cloud computing, big data, blockchain, cryptocurrencies, lines of code, smartphones, 5G. All of these things are fourth industrialized technologies that make up, the fourth industrialization. And what you're starting to see now is that a lot of people who majored in STEM in terms of being Black are actually not are leaving their institutions without earning a degree in it. Big problem. Big problem.
Yeah, Mike.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this ties to a question. I actually asked in the chat while the debate was actually going on, and I asked, what do you consider the major underlying reasons for the underrepresentation of Blacks in the STEM fields? What you just read answers that question.
Well, there's a variety of issues here, right? One of the major areas of why a person may drop out is because they lack any sort of cohesion with people that's within the program itself. If you're the only Black person, if you're like Kevin Samuel says, if you're a pepper in a sea of salt, that becomes a problem because you need a network with people who look like you. Sometimes, more often than not, that matters. For Black people, especially Black men, if they don't have that sort of network support, then they're bound to fall through the cracks. And that's why you have platforms like NSBE, National Society of Black Engineers. That's what that's there for, right? So it's to create that sort of social network and to create social cohesion. And so when we read these articles and we go back to the original point of the debate last night, are Blacks competing? The evidence is saying otherwise. You have artificial intelligence and automation coming in to take away a lot of the current opportunities from Black people, especially Black men. And then you look at the STEM enrollment, and you see that there's a high dropout rate for Blacks and compared to other groups. I don't think that Blacks are competing. That's just my opinion on this. Ejisa has his hand up. What's going on?
Hey, what up, Mike? How you doing?
I'm good, bro.
Happy New Year, man.
Happy New Year, brother.
I just caught the tail end of that article, but just by the title, I already knew what it was about. In fact, CNN did a story a couple years ago, and they were talking about CUNY, City College, CCNY, City College in New York, and how minorities, in particular, it interviewed a Black male that had dropped out of the program, and you're right. It's a culmination of things, but one of the big things is that I think a lot of times people are not prepared. High school does not prepare a lot of people for the type of math, just the type of coursework that's involved. I remember them talking, and a lot of people have just barely got by with college algebra, trig. They didn't have a good grasp of that. And so you get in there and, you know, you got all this high level math and you're just like blown away. You know, another thing is, like you said, the networking. You walk in there, you walk in class, you literally think this guy, the professor, is talking pig Latin. Like, you don't know what's going on. Now, it's one thing I want to counter though. I did not find Nesby to be that much of a resource because I mean it's we weren't really, I guess, we weren't really doing anything where other engineers are
Your mic is breaking up a lot, EG.
to us and stuff. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, bro.
Am I clear?
Yeah.
Okay. No, what I'm saying is that they weren't really. Yeah, I'm saying that they weren't really doing anything um, to be a resource. I'll give you an example. A lot of the they would get together after, especially around.
Your mic is breaking up a lot. EGC, your mic is breaking up a lot. You might have to log off and log back on.
All right, I'll do that. All right.
We got Johnny Blaze with his hand up. What's going on, bro?
Hey, Mike, how you doing?
I'm good, brother. So,
okay, not too bad. Hey, yeah, I was catching the article that you were just reading, and I know a lot of times when it comes to students coming out of programs, it's not always going to be the grades. It's going to be the environmental factors, whether they can afford it,
yep.
You know, just things at home, life issues. But as the last commenter was talking about, I do have to concur. High school is not preparing these folks for what college life is like. And I'll go with the prime example, just the reading comprehension. I always fall back to this. When I write test questions, I'm amazed at how many times my students truly cannot find the keywords in my questions. You know, so.
Now, you all still using physical books, or you all moved to ebooks? Have you
all? We're about 80% ebook, and
okay.
That's another issue, man. A lot of folks have a very difficult time using the ebooks. Now, I will say this. I think it's more so the fact that, you know, people are very used to having that ebook. You can thumb through, you can highlight with that physical book. I mean, you can do it with the ebook, but there is a learning curve there. And I mean, if you've not been exposed to this at a young age, continuously, you're going to struggle.
So, yeah. I think there's a cultural shock when it comes to ebooks, especially for the last generation, right? Gen Xers tend to, you know, they are very, very, they want to have that physical book. Millennials are, what I found is that they're 50-50. They can either have it or not. Especially for a lot of BWs, man, they love to, you know, read these sex novels off of Amazon in ebook format. So,
now I will say one other thing when it comes to the networking, and I'll just kind of use what I've seen at my school. When it comes to a lot of the BMs and BWs, they do kind of want to congregate together.
Yeah.
But for the most part, they need to start messing around with some of these other folks who have a lot more of the generalized knowledge that they can use. Because when they isolate themselves, they're isolating that knowledge. And I see that sometimes as being a detriment. And I end up losing 2 students because of that. They didn't want to associate with anybody else.
Right, self-isolation.
Yes.
Yeah, that's very impactful. Yeah, and you're right about the high schools that they're kind of just turning them out as is, right? So it's if Ford or any other auto, you know, Tesla, any one of these car companies were turning out bad products, man, you know, the DOTs and other agencies would be trying to hunt them down to figure out why are you putting out cars with poor airbags and, you know, poor brakes and things like that. Like there's no real standard as to you know, what's going on in terms of matriculation for you know, for these people when they come out of college, come out of high school and going into college. But I think that, you know, the high schools have to work hand in hand diligently with some of the local state universities. I think that's more important too.
Hey, Mike, I want to throw one more thing out there. Some of these students have learning issues and they don't know they do. And it's really important that the students ask for accommodations when it comes to the universities. And I think that's one of the things that has probably not really been highlighted much. Showcasing those folks who need those accommodations that they can actually get through school. But once again, these things have got to be identified early on.
Mm-hmm. Let me read this other paragraph. This paragraph says, minority students already face unfair stereotypes about being intellectually inferior, and this is likely exacerbated in STEM programs, according to the study. This issue was explored in a book by Maya Beasley, an associate professor at the University of Connecticut, called Opting Out, Losing the Potential of America's Young Black Elite. Beasley interviewed Black students and white students at two prominent universities and unearthed these sorts of obstacles faced by students of color. So let me read this other paragraph. Rico Crum said, research has proven that minority students are also more inclined to pursue majors and careers that are aligned with social justice issues, and they may find that the STEM fields are incompatible with those interests. She said that leaders in STEM education should push back on the narrative that STEM fields do not provide students opportunities to be engaged in such issues. Engineering, for instance, is about building new things that improve the quality of life. Rico Crum said, the narrative that Black and Latino students are choosing to leave for occupations that make less money and have less status, well, I'm wary of that, she said. Why do they feel they have to make a choice for their preference when white men feel they don't? So I'm not going to read the whole thing because I think that we're getting to the point of the debate from last night. The debate focused on the topic question, which is, are Blacks competing in America? This article says otherwise. This is from a reputable site. And I question it. I know the Prophet of Thought is in the chat. Shout out to TPOT for hosting that debate last night. But, these two pieces of evidence say otherwise, that, the writing is on the wall for a lot of Black people in America. All right, let me get to Johnny Blaze. He got his hand up.
Hey, I just want to comment on that last part. You talked about, you said something about careers that align with social issues or social justice or something along that line.
Black Lives Matter.
Okay, so
engineers.
Yeah, because right now I've had several students who have degrees in criminal justice who have now come through my program to be X-ray techs because they realized they can't make any money in criminal justice unless you're going into law enforcement. And most of these were actually women.
Right.
They didn't want to go.
Yeah, what we found is that criminal justice sounds great on your resume, but what happens when it's time to actually apply for some of these vertical markets? There's really no place for you. Most of the BWs that I know that have enrolled and graduated in criminal justice don't even work in criminal justice. They actually work in non-STEM fields, just kind of waste of education. So they're not competing in these areas where Asians are and actually other groups are, for that matter. I don't know what to say. I think there's too much glamorization behind the title for BWs. They are very, very title driven from my experience. They like that. They like the title senior, director, leader of this, leader of that, BS this, MS that, criminal justice this, psychology that. It's very, very title driven. Who was just trying to talk? Oh, Ejisa, go ahead. You have your hand up.
Can you hear me clear now?
You're breaking up a little bit. Try again. Your connection is breaking up. I can't understand you. I don't know if anybody else can understand you.
I'm just gonna lay back. Get rid of.
If you want to call in by number, I can drop the number in the chat and you can call in from there. All right, let me grab the number for him. All right, let me get back to the docket. All right, this one is from Brookins. Black and Hispanic underrepresentation in tech. It's time to change the equation. This is from March of 2018. Expand this out. The astonishing highs and lows of tech this year have thrown new tension onto just who is working in the sector and with what set of biases, assumptions, and priorities. In the previous post, we used data from our new report, Digitalization in the American Workforce, to assess the state of women's access to work, opportunity, and pay in the industry. The picture that emerged then was mixed, reflective of both significant acquisition of tech skills on the part of women and the industry sexism highlighted by former Google engineer James Damore's explosive memo last summer. But what about the state of racial and ethnic representation in tech? This too has become a huge topic of concern. And so we again want to build on our earlier work on the digital workforce to examine a mixed state of affairs, albeit one with several bright spots. What do the data say? To dig beneath the broad story of steadily increasing digital skills among Black and Hispanic workers found in our report, we use the 4.6 million worker computer math and mathematical occupational group as a useful stand-in for tech employment. And here, the picture for Blacks and Hispanics nationwide is especially mixed. Broadly speaking, Blacks and Hispanics have made genuine progress in penetrating the nation's tech sector. Blacks, for example, have increased their presence in several important tech occupations, such as computer programming and operations research. Likewise, Hispanics have increased their representation in the overall C&M occupational group, moving from 5.5% of workers in the sector in 2002 to 6.8 workers in 2016. So if we look at these numbers right here, let me expand this out so that everybody can see it. So in terms of computer programmers, Blacks only make up, as of 2016, 7.6% of that workforce. Information security, we make up a pretty large, not a large demographic, but we're represented by at least 9%, might be even more now. Database administrators, 4.4%, so that's what Josh is. Computer systems analysts, 10.8%. Operations research analysts, 11%. Statisticians, 8%. Computer network architects, 13%. So we do not make up the majority of these areas, despite the fact that there's 1 million recs on the table that Nagone talks about. Nagone talks about 1 million recs being on the table and none of them being fulfilled, right? So where are we really dominating? Where are we really competing, for that matter, in this fourth industrial age? And yet, with that said, the presence of Blacks and Hispanics in computer and math jobs remains starkly inadequate at the national level. Blacks make up 11.9% of all workers, but only 7.9% of C&M workers. The gap is even larger for Hispanics, who make up 16.7% of all workers, but only 6.8% of C&M workers. Moreover, in some instances, the diversity picture is growing bleaker. Black representation in C&M occupations is moving in the wrong direction, slipping from 8.1% of the field in 2002 to 7.9% in 2016. Only 4.4% and 2.9% of the database administrators were Black and Hispanic. That includes Josh, respectively, in 2016. But even those small shares reflect decline since 2002. While tech companies across the nation have over and over said they must do better, Blacks and Hispanics still remain underrepresented in tech jobs by nearly 50%. Where are we competing? Where are we competing? That's what last night's debate was about. Anything that you know prior to the Obama administration, you can throw it out. Going forward, it's all about fourth industrialization. Are you competing in these areas? The numbers say otherwise. And so Black and over and under representation in computer and mathematical occupations. So most of our representation is in all the hotspots, right? Seattle, Portland, Silicon Valley. Well, actually not Silicon Valley, but the red spots show DC, right? Southern Florida as well. I suspect that most of these areas are military and government assignments. The orange represents at least 10%. So in up north, most of your representation is in the East Coast, and not so much anywhere else. In the Midwest, it's almost bleak. It's almost bleak. So we're not dominating anything. We're not competing in these areas in the way that they some people would have you think. Top 10 metros by Black workers representation in computer and math occupations. Florida, like I was saying before, Daytona. Fairfield, California. Gulfport, Mississippi. Is that Mississippi? No, I think that's Missouri. South Carolina, Las Vegas, Providence in Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, that turnpike, San Diego, shout out to Josh, Chattanooga in Texas. And so we're not seeing these large numbers that some people will have you think that we're competing heavily in these new industrialized markets, these emerging techs. This is from the Brookings Institute. Does anybody have anything they want to add to this? All right, let me move on to the next one.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, there it is. I mean, there's nothing you could really say after that.
Yeah, well, at least you're representing that 4% of DBA. So,
Roger that.
Get a second job, man. We need to increase the numbers.
All right, I got you.
All right, let me grab one more. Let me grab this one. All right, let me share my screen. All right, this one is from Fortune. Tech companies are still struggling to hire Black workers. June 8th of 2018. I'll expand this out. I can't see anything. When Maxine Waters, the Democratic representative from Southern Los Angeles, toured Silicon Valley during the first week of May with fellow members of the Congressional Black Caucus, she was blunt about the technology industry's lack of progress hiring Black employees. Waters, standing at a lectern in front of a wall of windows at Lyft Incorporated's offices in San Francisco, said she was floored to learn that Black workers make up 1 or 2% of the workforce at several prominent tech companies. I'm not about diplomacy, said Waters, threatening regulation. I'm not urging, I'm not encouraging, I'm about to hit some people across the head with a hammer. I know how to do this and I know how to do it well. Tech companies know that they have a race problem, but their efforts to address it have so far yielded little. Facebook Incorporated says that 3% of its US workforce is Black, up from 2% in 2014. The company has declined to say how many of those people occupy technical roles. Only 2% of Google's workers are Black, a figure that has remained static for the past 3 years. The Alphabet Incorporated unit's efforts to increase that have sparked an internal backlash, with one former employee suing because of perceived discrimination against white and male candidates. Hello, MGTOW? Among 8 of the largest US tech companies, the portion of Black workers in technical jobs rose to 3.1% in 2017 from 2.5% in 2014. According to the data compiled by Bloomberg News, the latest data from the US government released in 2016 reinforces the point. Blacks made up 7% of the US high-tech force. Blacks made up 7% of the US high-tech workforce and just 3% of the total Silicon Valley workforce. The problem has stubbornly remained, even as representation of the other industry minorities, most notably women, has crept up. While there's a disproportionately high number of South and East Asians who work in the tech industry, they are the least likely to attain leadership roles, according to the Ascend Foundation, a group focused on diversity in tech. It's a very complex and comprehensive problem, said Allison Scott, chief researcher at the Kapoor Center of Social Impact, who has studied the issue. Some tech companies have thought, if I can bite off a manageable thing, gender diversity, then I can get to race. And that's a really problematic way to think about it. The numbers aren't just statistics to Black employees inside these companies. They are an unsettling hum underlying their everyday work. One Black employee at Facebook, who asked not to be identified because he's not authorized to speak publicly, said he was very lonely at the office. He participates in a Black employee resource group, but said he doesn't have mentors or sponsors at Facebook, even though there are diversity advocates there. He should subscribe to the Black Brain Trust if he needs a mentor. He's also encountered challenges in the peer review system at the company. Staffers have latitude every 3 months to choose some of the colleagues they like to review. The more you're in the club, the more it's, I'll review you and you'll review me and we'll give each other good reviews, he said. His coworkers haven't always been helpful to him when they collaborate on a project. And sometimes he chooses not to ask for help because he's felt isolated. The world is whirling around you, but you're not in the loop, he said. You don't know what's going on, and that breeds anxiety. I know that feeling. Recently, he was at a team social event and encountered new Black people there, ones he had never before seen at Menlo Park campus. He said the party reminded him of a scene in the film Get Out. Like the movie, the new employees looked like props that were conveniently staged to showcase a more welcoming environment that he felt actually existed. This is a really good article. I'm not going to read the whole thing because I'm just trying to make the point that in the fourth industrialization, Blacks have very little representation. Even Maxine Waters wanted to hit somebody over the head and actually promised to actually do so. I'd be interested to know what the progress was of that. Let me bring on Dr. Phoenix and complex design. And so going back to the debate on the profit of thought last night between the two gentlemen, are Blacks competing in America? I'm not seeing any evidence of this in terms of the fourth industrialization of this country. They are not a part of the conversation at all, like the brother just said. Like the brother just said in the article, you feel isolated. Even though you're there by yourself. There is no network or support system. And so you get labeled as being standoffish, but in reality, they forced you into a corner. But people would have you believe that Black people are killing it. It's not the case. It's not the case at all. Cocaine Kells, do you have anything you want to add to this?
Hi, not yet. I'm actually researching something real quick, but I will add once I'm done. Thank you.
Duly noted. Dr. Phoenix, you have anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, I do. I have a few things. I heard part of that debate last night. I came in near the tail end of it, but I did hear the exchange where the question was posed: are Black folks making it in America or not? And so my take on it is that these undergraduate institutions are litmus tests.
Mm-hmm.
They are good barometers to see where Black folks at, especially young Black people. I can tell you my time in undergrad, I've tutored in biochemistry, I've tutored in general biology, and I've tutored especially in the area of anatomy and physiology. And I can tell you right now, what Johnny Blaze said before and what Ejiza had mentioned as well, is that no, high schools are not preparing students for the type of the knowledge, the skills that you need to be successful in college. And more importantly, it's not preparing them for the pace that you have to move at when you're a college student. It's independent, but you move at a very different pace than you do in a high school environment. And I think in regards to the way the gentleman answered the other gentleman's question, I'm just gonna be real frank about this. I really hate when folks are disingenuous about these kinds of subjects,
Mm-hmm.
because you do Black society a disservice by not really telling the real story.
Okay.
Because again, at the end of the day, these colleges, I mean, every Black student I've ever known at my undergrad institution, again, I talked about where I went, they all switch majors at least 3 times,
Mm-hmm.
at least.
Mm-hmm.
And again, when it comes down, when I ask them, why do you switch majors? It all comes back to the same problem. They weren't ready. They weren't prepared. They didn't understand the material. They didn't have a basic grasp. Like what Johnny Blaze was saying, how he writes his test questions.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they test you in the healthcare field. It's a lot of, the questions are are critical based. You have to do a lot of critical thinking. So it's not necessarily where you're drawing on concepts per se. you're memorizing, you're drawing on concepts that you memorize, but it's more or less, can you apply those concepts in real life? Can you pull out those those clues within those questions to answer the question itself?
Right.
As it pertains to the NCLEX, I talked about this before. The NCLEX can be a 6-hour exam, 265 questions. MCAT, 8-hour exam. Very, very knowledge based, but also but exam also very much driven on your ability to critically think. We'll throw a whole bunch of information in here. Can you pull out the relevant information? Because these are all skills that you need, especially as a scientist in these STEM fields, but more importantly in the healthcare field, because people tell you a whole bunch of stuff, but you have to be able to get to the heart of what it is that's really going on with them. And so again, I think we don't do kids a disservice we don't do Black society a disservice by being really disingenuous about what the real scope of the problem is. And in terms of the question that Keep It Techie asked to the gentleman, one of the responses was that it was about access. The problem isn't access. If you look at all the literature out there, and there's literature going back decades, they all pretty much conclude very much the same thing. Most of what happens to kids in an academic environment very much happens outside of the academic environment. The younger you are, the greater the effect that your social economic environment has on you. And so, again, I think we're kind of kicking the can down the road by really not pointing the fingers where oftentimes it needs to get pointed. Now, again, Johnny Blaze did bring up some really important points about highlighting, students being isolated, which I 100% agree with that. That is very true. But also, too, he also highlights something that's very important that I've also seen is that Black students do not want to work with other groups of students. And one of the bits of advice I got years ago was one of the gentlemen that ultimately wrote one of my letters of recommendation. He specifically said that to me. He said, look, get next to find the smartest person you can find, white, Black, otherwise. He said they probably not gonna be Black. Get to know them, you all be best friends. Now, I didn't really necessarily have that problem because I had a pretty good depth of knowledge and had a pretty good background. But I am saying for kids that are just coming into that collegiate level system, it is very much an important skill that they need to master, because it also comes down to how you get these successful jobs at the colleges, your ability to network while you're in college and forge those relationships that are going to last you for the most part, for your life, throughout your life.
Right. I think, there's a lot of truth to what you and Johnny Blaze were saying about the high school piece. I think one of the ways that we can actually facilitate that is to get them at the freshman level. And then you gotta, because summertime they have off, but that summertime, that June, July, and August, there should be some kind of program set up so that they could walk them into healthcare or walk them in through some other form STEM program. Most of these public schools do not spend their money on that type of stuff at all. They kind of just turn them out and that's it.
Well, to answer Gabe's to make a statement about a statement that Gabe just put up in the chat, you can get away with that in STEM. If you're in programming and coding, you can kind of be a lone wolf, but in healthcare, you can't.
No, in STEM, you can't. In information technology, you can't do that anymore either.
Yeah.
I got several job descriptions that I went over a couple months ago that describe they don't want any introverts.
Yeah, because again, when you're working, for example, in healthcare, you're working as part of a team. So usually, for example, the nurse does pretty much the coordinating. So the nurse coordinates all the care that happens to a patient. So whether that patient needs to see ortho, they need to see an infectious disease person, whatever the case may be, they need to go to rehab, they need to get admitted, discharged, whatever. The nurse is the one that generally facilitates that. Now, where everyone comes in is that everyone does their individual job, perform their individual skill within the scope of that healthcare system and how you provide care to that patient. So, I mean, this idea where you can just be introverted and that work, they might work for you, maybe even as a contract. But again, in a healthcare setting, no. And truth be told, this is an apples and oranges comparison, because we're talking about an academic institution where teamwork is key. versus you being an independent operating contractor.
Yeah, I don't.
Just to add to
This is
that right
Gabe right
fast.
here.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
this.
apologize.
Yeah. Oh no, you good? No, I don't. Yeah, I don't work as an independent contractor. I actually work on a team, primarily made up of engineers and security practitioners. So I don't do contracting work where I just go in as one individual. But no, I think you can do that. And I've never seen a job posting that ever said no introverts allowed. I'm not exactly sure what that. I've never seen that ever before.
Yeah, I got a few job descriptions that were sent out. We went over this a few months ago, but go ahead.
It says no introverts allowed or no introverts.
It didn't say no introverts allowed. It says no, introverts are not really welcome. So then, it's a startup, so they're not looking for introverts. Everybody works on the floor together. So,
well, to be honest, I'm sorry, Mike. To be honest, I don't think that's a problem that most black males have, being introverted. Even though we're in STEM, even though you have that whole nerd trope, that's not a problem most black males have.
Are you sure about that? The article that we
I
read.
don't know if I agree with
I
that.
know. When I was in EE, that's not. In fact, a lot of times, once they realize, because it's usually the brothers that come out of initiate a lot of this the engagement. You become that nucleus. A lot of students tend to gravitate towards you. That's how I said when I was there. I thought I was lost, but it turns out everybody was. But when people see that you have the courage to speak up, people start to gravitate. That's why when you mentioned Nesby, a lot of people, not just blacks, but everybody joins Nesby because it's like a resource. It's like a meetup. It's like where everybody can, I guess, kind of, compare notes, just compare thoughts or whatnot. So I don't think that's a problem we have. Even
Well,
though
the article that we just read from Inside Higher Education actually talks about that.
well, let me ask Gabe, you were in you did EE. When you were in EE, how many brothers, how many black males were in did you go through with? Were you the only one?
I think it was probably about 3 of us, and I think 2 of us finished.
Okay, well, were y'all introverted? Were y'all introverts or shy?
Not necessarily shy. So I think there's a misconception about introverts.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think introverted means shy, but it does mean that you tend to
not possessing the soft skills to interact with people.
No, not at all.
No. We're talking about people who are self-isolating.
No.
I don't think that's us.
Well, we're talking about the lone wolf types.
Yeah,
that's really what we're talking about here.
Yeah,
well, I was just responding to what Mike said. No introverts were. It was mentioned that there were introverts that were allowed for a particular job posting. But I guess my initial comment was towards that whole idea of individuals in a workplace not really liking the environment and really, not really feeling that they were connecting with their coworkers. Mm-hmm. And that's what I was initially responding to, because I think that when you just go in with the mentality, like the comment said, is that, listen, I'm here to work. I'm here to produce a particular unit of work and output, rather than, being people's friends and everything. But I think those Facebooks and Googles kind of try to advertise in that manner. Like, hey, we're a family. We're all here together and doing all this.
We have to. I've been in those environments, and I can tell you right now, they do push that. They do push that to the culture.
Yeah.
When I used to work for Dell, they were pushing that culture. I actually met with Michael Dell. He gave me my first paycheck. And the sort of culture that they were pushing for was similar to that of Facebook and Google. They were trying to move in that direction. And so they were weeding out a lot of these, I guess what would be considered alt-right people from the workplace. And so the point that I'm making
actually worked. Any black male that's actually worked in this country, every black male knows that you don't get too comfortable around these people, because
I don't think that's the point, Ajisa. I think the problem becomes where we're talking about the ability to not not necessarily be outgoing per se, but your ability to at least voice your opinions on something. Because I give you an example. In my undergraduate class, again, I've said this 1,000 times before, but I was the only black male. There was about 6 other black students in there. Now, the only black students that ever failed my cohort were the black students, and they were black females, and they were the ADOS. Because why did they fail? Because they didn't work together. This is even after I reached out to them and said, hey, you guys want to get together and, study this pharmacology, study this population science, health science course. I'm pretty good at stats, let me know. What did they fail? Population health sciences, because they couldn't do the stats.
You cut out. You said who didn't want to join and who didn't want to work together?
Black women.
Okay, that's different. But see, that's different, and that's like.
But we're talking about black students as a whole. We're not just specifically focusing on black males. But I say that to say,
I can't hear you.
Can anyone else hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Oh, I say that to say that my point is that simply that if you look at any medical school's website, you look at their mission, their ethos, you look at any nursing school's website, their mission and their ethos, one of the first things you're going to see them saying is we foster an environment of teamwork, because that is what you have to engage in when you're actually a clinician and you're in a healthcare environment. And also too, I give you an example. We had to go through multiple simulations every semester. And those simulations, like one semester, we had to go through a simulation where we actually had to deliver babies. and part of that simulation was that we all had designated things that we did in this simulation, and we would run it a few times, and we would all alternate and switch off, so each person did the other person's job at least once. And so, I say that to say, because again, this is something, this idea of being introverted, I saw this a lot. I do see this a lot, where this is why a lot of black students also don't do well in undergrad, because they won't speak up and say, I just need help. Because oftentimes the introvertedness is really just students being really proud, being private.
No, I don't think so.
Just to add on the tech side, and I know you're in the tech field as well as Mike, Gabe, but I'm seeing a big push in the scale agile framework, and I just want to put that out there. That's basically all about teamwork, and this is being pushed in different sectors. I know it's being pushed in the government sector, so I just want to add that I mean, that is forcing people to get out of that introvert mindset, in my opinion.
I think it's a difference. I think what we're not making the distinction about here is the difference in learning styles with the education that you were speaking of, Dr. Phoenix, and also with the working styles. Everybody does not work the best in group settings. Everybody does not learn the best in group settings. There's at times individuals who are able to produce the most from more of an individual, and then they bring whatever that output of work or whatever that learning style to the group. So
exactly,
it's I don't think it's wise to put that out there to say that, hey, if you are just like they're trying to weed out introverts from workplaces and school environments. I don't think that's an accurate representation of what what's actual.
I mean, because when it comes to these, when like Dr. Phoenix was saying, when it comes to these study groups, dude, if you're healthcare and nurse, that's totally different. When you're in STEM fields, a lot of times it's sink or swim. When it comes to exam time, everybody. So if you really need help, I think people are gonna. I think people, guys will step up. I never saw an issue where people weren't looking to work together.
Yeah,
It's
but you're speaking from an individual standpoint. I'm saying the articles are saying otherwise, right? The article is saying inside higher education is saying otherwise, and I think Johnny Blaze being in the academy and what Dr. Phoenix is saying is actually corroborating that report.
Well, nursing and STEM are totally different.
Articles.
Nursing and STEM are two totally different. No, they're very different. I mean,
hey guys.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Johnny Blaze has had his hand up. I want to get Johnny Blaze in.
Hey, I'm just going to say this from a professor's perspective. When I do tutoring, and I can tell you this, in most cases, when the Black students come to me, they come to me at the very end when they're desperate. They don't come to me in the beginning. All the other students, they come to me early on. Hey, I need help. And I'm telling you, and I've been teaching for a long, long time. I teach in the civilian world and I taught in the military. But for the most part, the Black students, and I'm not saying all of them, but I'm saying about 70% will only come to me when their back is against the wall. And I'll leave it at that.
And that was what I was getting at earlier about the prideful thing. That's exactly what happened to me when they came to me for tutoring and help. Was that literally I'm on the verge of failing this course, and if I don't get at least a B plus on the next exam, I'm done. That's what happens.
Not all the time.
That what happens probably about 3/4 of the time. That's what happens.
And guys, hello
different
guys.
learning styles. But
Yeah, but hey,
Well,
hey, guys.
But again, Gabe, you're missing the point.
Yeah, this is Maurice. Now I'll wait.
Yeah, let Dr. Phoenix finish, and then you jump in.
Gabe,
Yes,
you're
sir.
missing the point. That's not how it works. Again, this is not just about learning styles. This is about how do you function in the real world. Again, you're trained a certain way in healthcare, and I don't know why Jesus keeps saying that, because I just sent Mike a bunch of damn links in an email a few days ago from the NIH. So I don't know why you keep trying to separate. No, very much.
I know what you're saying, but you mentioned women.
You're missing the point. Here's the problem. Here's the problem. When you get into a BSN program, then you'll be saying something different. Trust me. However,
My wife was in a BSN program.
what I am saying to you is that I'm not saying it to be
Well,
condescending. I'm saying this in a way because you're speaking as a person who you haven't done an official baccalaureate program yet, and once you're in that program and you see just how oftentimes how cutthroat it is.
Oh,
And
dude, I see it now. I mean, I see it now. I'm
you're
in school.
working, brother. You're kind of
No. I'm in school right now. I'm in the ADM
But what
program
I'm
right
saying,
now.
you're splitting your time between working and studying. What
But
I'm
I'm a
saying,
full-time student.
but you also work, right?
What's the difference?
Because a
full-time.
lot of what you say is also very much influenced by the fact that you also work while you study. So
Well, it's influenced by. I mean, I don't have that problem because I'm pretty smart and I can pick things up myself. I really don't need to lean on anybody. But
again, you're also older, and that was my point. And that's why I was able to be a little bit more successful in my program. And I didn't really need that help like that because one, I already had a medical background. Two, I was a little older. But we're talking about 18, 19, 20-year-olds coming into that collegiate system for the first time.
I'm confused.
Well, it's a common. It's a lot of stuff that kind of works together against us. I mean,
we understand that, but we're specifically talking about a critical issue of
networking and working together. Yes.
Well, not just working together, but the attitude inside these programs, as well as not being prepared going in. So you're underprepared going in.
I've never met brothers that had a stank attitude, or not stank, or were turning their nose up or didn't want to help. I mean,
I don't think that's the issue.
Yeah, go ahead, Maurice. Jump in, please.
Yeah, so I'll talk about it from two sides. I'll talk about it because I mentor. I'm mentor 5 right now. 2 are in their early 30s, late 40s, and 3 are just out of high school or just about to graduate. And the gulf of differences between what each group does is amazing. So to back up Dr. Phoenix, a lot of the younger ones have a hard time reaching out for help. I usually have to follow up and call. My older folk who are transitioning from another career field, who are currently going back to school, they are on top of me. I get emails, phone calls, meeting dates. My younger folk, I gotta initiate. And I'm not too sure if it's a cultural thing, but what I've noticed that a lot of the millennials that are coming up, they're not prepped for that environment, and they have a hard time adjusting to it because they're usually first generation college students, the ones I have. And so they have a hard time adjusting to that environment, and they feel from my guessing and working with them directly, they feel overwhelmed and they're unsure of themselves, and they feel like they're being of nuisance if they're reaching out for help, and then a little pride too. That's what I've seen out of my younger ones, right? So I got to pull teeth to get them on board with something. My older ones, not a problem. So the people who are coming either ex-military, another career field, they've been in the world, they got kids and family, they got no problem putting me to work, no problem at all. So I think that is kind of perspective. And now going back to the job front, I worked in DC, Texas, Cali, the Bay Area, New York. And what I've noticed that I think is a regional thing, because when I first left Atlanta for California, I felt extremely isolated going into those work environments because I was usually the only Black guy there. But I was in my early 20s when it happened. I'm older now. When I went out there last time, I had no problem socializing. I lived life. So I think is a regional and age piece that we got to put on the table to think about.
Well, when you say age,
Gabe had his hand up, so I want to make
Oh,
sure.
my bad.
No, it's all good. No, I guess my major point is that there is a diversity of styles of working in groups, and that doesn't always look like, this whole, hey, I'm going to be right in your face and we're going to be best friends and we're going to have this company culture of, everybody is always so collaborative. Sometimes productive workers, especially in tech, they look like individuals who literally go to the woodshed and they craft something and they come and present it to the greater public, and then it gets changed and there's collaboration. So I guess my whole point is that I'm saying that there is not only one style of learner and one style of worker. And at times, these organizations like Facebook and Google, they promote this, hey, we're all in this whole buddy system. And I don't think that that's always the most accurate, because it doesn't take into account the diversity of working and learning styles.
Okay. And Gabe, can I follow up real quick before the next person goes? I noticed a big difference because I transitioned from DC to California. California is a work culture environment. They want you to participate outside of work to kind of get cohesiveness with teams.
Yep.
And it's weird for me because I'm coming from government contracting. Yep. You clock in, you go home, right? In Cali, they expect you to show up to the happy hour. They expect that. And they don't say that, but they expect it. So the culture is different in California.
Same thing in Minnesota. I noticed the difference between Minnesota and the East Coast, and it's completely different culture.
Well,
I think there's people people with certain styles across the whole world that have different styles. So I don't think that the place really changes the sentiment.
Again, to what Jesus was trying to say earlier, I would say this much. I wasn't trying to be condescending, but what I am telling you, given what you and I talked about offline and what you want to do, you want to go into critical care. And if you think teamwork isn't a major part of critical care, let me know. Come holler at me when you're in critical care and you done spent 15 hours on the floor and you done spent maybe about 3 of those hours with the actual patient. The other 12 of those hours you spent running around on the phone, doing all other kinds of stuff, trying to make sure that you're getting whatever your patient needs. Mm-hmm. So when that happens for you, brother, I'm sure what you're saying now is going to change. Because again, if you think that's not a fundamental part of what happens, even as a clinician, I don't care if you're a physician, the same thing happens. You do not do nothing within this. You do not just operate as this lone wolf and, well, everything I say is do. Because again, you and I talked about this before. And I've told you exactly how physicians operate within the critical care, within these ICUs. Nurses, for the most part, run the ICUs.
I think.
But again, you're missing my point. You get 2 patients, and I'm using the ICU as an example so you understand. Typically, you get 2 patients. They typically go be some of the sickest patients in the hospital, and so you have to do everything for them. Mm-hmm. So it's not going to be you, and it's not going to necessarily just be, well, Jesus is just going to get these folks and he does what he does and that's the end of the story. No, you're going to be the one having to call infectious disease because they got a pneumonia. You need to make sure you give them the right damn antibiotic for it. You know, they got something going on where you're gonna have to coordinate 3 or 4 different specialists.
Mhm.
And so
I'm sorry,
that's what
I never disputed that though.
no, but you're trying. My point, or what I'm getting at, is that you're missing the point that it's a lot different once you get beyond the space. And like I said before, you know, I think a lot of what happens with you, you're kind of influenced by the fact that you work and you're a full-time student.
Mhm.
I didn't do that. I did not work. I was at a Big Ten institution in an undergrad program, and so it was all about academics.
Well, I think originally we were, I guess, because my feed keeps going
Uh,
in
yeah,
these
you sense
programs.
was that?
I thought we were talking. Am I clear?
Yeah, you clear now.
I thought we were talking about school at first.
But I am talking about school, because what you do in that classroom translates to what you do at that job. That's what my point is. There's not going to be a whole lot of deviation behind the way you work in that classroom in teams, the way you work in those simulation labs and teams, and what you're going to do in reality when you're on the floor.
Actually, it is because I've worked. You just mentioned simulation labs. I can remember. I can remember even as just as far back as last semester. A lot of times, like Gabe said, sometimes you got to do the work yourself, and then you bring it to the group. I mean, but that's not to say that people have a
What kind
problem.
of simulation lab did you do where you had it? Because usually with simulation labs,
It was
it's usually,
maternity. It was maternity. We were doing
yeah,
maternity.
yeah. So usually
Um,
they just have you answer some general questions. You bring it. That's what you do. But then
I know
everybody else
we had
has
to.
a
We had
simulation
to.
lab.
It was a presentation. So I had to do a presentation on what was it? False. I forgot. Like I can't remember. Like fetal false pregnancy or something like that.
There's a
But
reason you
I
do simulation labs. I'm just gonna put it to you like this. There's a reason you do simulation labs, because they very much reflect what in most cases what will most likely happen in a real life scenario. That's why you do it in the first place.
look. I'm just
So
saying. I'm
I
just
mean,
saying.
people don't work together.
I don't think that in as far as brothers goes in STEM that we have a problem working together or networking or asking for help. I
Jesus,
mean that's
Jesus, you're older, brother. That's what I'm trying to tell you, man. That was what I said
well
earlier.
most people when you go to college are young. So I just
But you're older,
that's
so you've been through stuff, so you're better able to adapt to the environment than some 17 or 18-year-old. They got the weight of their entire family sitting on their shoulders because you're supposed to be the family savior.
Right.
That's what you don't have.
I mean, but dude, if we're in there, I mean, and Gabe can relate to this. You find, you know,
I mean, but do
I,
you mentor? I got babies now. They don't do what you're talking about now.
Yeah.
Man,
I mean, it's
dude,
there.
my
I mean,
girlfriend can tell you, man. She's seen me track down my 18 and 19-year-old mentees. She will tell you, dude.
I'm in the same boat.
I
I
mean,
don't
I
see what you're
guess
talking about.
I guess so, but that's
it's
not.
differences. It's definitely differences. It's not. I mean, yeah, I don't know.
No, I remember. I do remember. I do remember taking being. I was going to school in Brooklyn, and I remember asking a BW about something about OChem working together or whatever about somehow, and she blatantly told me, "Oh, I don't share answers and stuff like that." Mind you, she ended up failing the course, but just little stuff. That was from. That's why I say there's a difference between some of these healthcare related courses because now you're getting in, it's a mixture, whereas as opposed to just some of these straight STEM courses.
You want to be a CRNA, brother, you need OChem. I'll tell you that right now. So if you haven't taken it, keep it on your radar.
I already have it. I already
Okay,
took
I'm just saying, because
Took both.
I think the point of what, see, again, like I said, you're kind of looking at it from I think there's kind of this little gender dynamic happening with you, brother.
Well, it is a gender dynamic when it comes to this. And
So
when you're in
what I'm
STEM,
trying to say here, man,
it is a
is that,
gender dynamic. We don't.
but what I'm trying to say to
Because
you
I've been
here is
both.
that across the board, and what the article is saying, that across the board doesn't matter the gender.
Yeah.
That's what's happening, and I think
Yeah.
that was what more recent November was highlighting as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
and when I was an undergrad as well, it was the same exact way. A lot of black males who came in there with the swagger, man, they didn't last more than 2 semesters. That was it. They were pretty much one and done.
But
Well,
that
those are
don't,
those are general ed classes. When you start getting into your major, when you're in circuit analysis, when you're in power systems, all that stuff, Man, like everybody is looking for a life preserver. Everybody's looking for help.
That's the focus of the discussion.
No, I
Yeah,
wasn't
but
talking about.
everybody clicks up though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but we're talking
Yes,
about
they do.
The
You're right.
Africans
You're
go
right.
with
They
the
do click up.
Africans. The Indians go with the Indians.
Yes, you're right.
And
You're
then
very right. I
they
believe
click
that.
up.
Yes, you're
No.
right. You're right. They do that.
Let me
No,
tell you, there are people who are just individuals. I didn't click up with nobody. Electronics, circuits, electromagnetism, power systems analysis. I didn't click up with nobody because I don't work well in groups. I don't.
But Gabe, did you have
So
preparation
it's
prior
different.
to you walking into that college class?
Yeah. Did you? Yeah. Well, did you read before you went into
I
class?
didn't know anything about. I didn't know anything about electrical engineering.
have you ever been to math camp?
You never had no physics
In math
lab,
camp? Yeah.
nothing.
No, not before college, but math camp, yeah. But that's like math. The foundations of math doesn't necessarily prepare you for these hardcore engineering classes.
No, they
I
don't.
would certainly agree with that. But
So
what I am saying, you had some level of exposure, so you knew at
no,
least.
I had no level of exposure.
So
That's what I'm
Gabe,
saying.
right before, before each class, you didn't study up or read up. You would just go to class and
Sometimes
take
I
notes.
did, sometimes I didn't. So I was a part of
Okay.
NASB. I was heavily a part of NASB. I was on the regional board while I was there. So we would at times travel from chapter to chapter within Region 4 to go do meetings, to do regional conferences, national conferences.
But Gabe, you was part of leadership, man. What you talking about? You're a leader.
Indeed,
Yeah.
I was a leader, but that doesn't mean that I always had time to prepare for all these.
No. The mindset. You was a leader going into situations, man. You wasn't a soldier. You was a general in the field.
I guess what I'm
talking
saying
about. I'm talking about when
I'm not
it's
exactly
when
sure
it's time.
what
I'm
you're
talking
talking
about. I get what Gabe is saying because eventually I did that, but I'm talking about when the group of Asian students have last semester's exam and it's the same as this
Oh, they
semester.
cheat all the time.
Yeah, and they don't share it with you. You have to literally know somebody like maybe Zone, and you get in through Zone. Zone is your in through the group, and Zone kind of like helps you out. Be like, okay, here's what we're doing. Afterwards,
Let me tell you. Let me fill you in
None of
on
that.
something. This is what you and I were having this discussion about offline, where I told you there's a major difference between nurses who started out in a BSN, meaning you went to a 4-year institution, got into a BSN program, and how you and I talked. You said they don't make you apply. No, because again, what was the qualification? One, you had to get into the university to begin with, so that's the initial qualification. But then you have to go through this sort of application process that looks, it looks very similar to something like a graduate school type program or whatever. But here's the funny thing: those general ed courses that you keep talking about, those are your prerequisites.
well, that's when you see that nonsense. Like Mike V was
to
saying.
what you were saying,
That's when you
about
see that nonsense.
dude, I went to a school that's mostly white, man. I'm in a state that's like 90+% white. So the school I went to, man, the students there, they're doing. One of my friends is mom, and he's sitting there looking. He's in a biochem course, and he's talking about how how all the students had they got family members that graduated from this institution. Brothers,
Okay,
sisters,
I think we're kind of mixing apples.
Listen,
Go
brother.
ahead.
So they
I'm
got
sorry.
generations of family members and friends. They have a whole network that they can tap into. So yes, they had the exams from 2, 3, 4 semesters prior, and so yes, so they had that. And what I'm saying is that instead of black students don't even bother to do that at all. That's always been from the very first time I came on the panel. That's all I ever talk about. Black students don't even bother to do that. Now I got students that are members of the SNMA, the Student National Medical Association, and they're members with me. But we help. We get new students, new undergrads that are coming in, and they got to take OChem or something like that, or a genetics course, and we help them out. Like, yeah, we got some of the old quizzes and stuff like that. You can use this to study. We got old notes and stuff like that. But what I'm saying, that's a small group of students who do that. And if the gist of the conversation was that we're not even getting students into these programs, and that they're so-called making it, when the article that Mike just read about 20 minutes ago says otherwise, and I've been saying this for a long time.
Well, it's Johnny Blaze has been saying this.
Yeah. So what I'm telling you is, yeah, I get what you're saying, brother. I'm saying black students are Black students are only showing up, brother, when the shit has hit the fan. In most cases,
Okay,
I
let me,
guess
let
so.
me,
it has nothing to do with learning style.
yeah, let me jump to this article, man. Diversity in tech. This is from the EEOC.gov. The high sector has become a major source of economic growth, fueling the U.S. economy, and is an innovation leader. The high-tech sector has impacted how we communicate and create, and access information, distribute products and services, and address critical societal problems. Because the sector is the source of an increasing number of jobs, it is particularly important that the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, EEOC, and its stakeholders understand the emerging trends in the industry, ensuring a sufficient supply of workers with the appropriate skills and credentials, and addressing the lack of diversity among high-tech workers have become central public policy concerns. The report seeks to shed more light on employment patterns in the high-tech industry by providing an overview of literature as a backdrop to understanding high-tech employment and analyzing corresponding summary data from the Employer Information EEO1 report. I'm going to kind of skim down to the parts that I think are more critical. This report aims to add to the public policy discussion by exploring employment trends in the high-tech sector in 3 ways. Sector 1 provides a brief overview of some of the literature addressing high-tech employment. Section 2 analyzes EEO1 data from the high-tech sector, both nationwide and in the geographic area generally referred to as Silicon Valley. And Section 3 reviews employment statistics derived from a group of leading Silicon Valley firms. I'm only going to read a couple of these paragraphs, so we'll won't be long. Section 1 briefly reviews the literature addressing the high-tech employment, which has tended to focus on 2 issues. 1, the supply of labor with appropriate skills, and 2, the reasons behind the underrepresentation of women and minority workers in the relevant labor workforce. One body of literature emphasizes the challenges of the U.S. education system to produce appropriately skilled workers. I think this is what Dr. Phoenix and Johnny Blaze was referring to earlier. And the factors that influence the prevalence of women and minorities in particular career paths and occupations. Another body of literature focuses on the attrition of women and minorities as students and as employees. The literature cites research and personal experience indicating that bias impedes the full and equal participation of women and minorities in STEM fields. Section 2 examines employment trends in the high-tech sector through an analysis of the available 2014 EEO1 data. By using that nationwide 2014 EEO1 data to examine the participation of women and minorities in overall private sector employment compared to that of the high-tech sector, we identify several concerning trends. Compared to the overall private industry, the high-tech sector employed a larger share of whites, 63.5% to 68.5%, Asian Americans, 5.8% to 14%, and men, 52% to 64%, and a smaller share of African Americans, 14.4% to 7.4%. In the tech sector nationwide, whites are represented at a higher rate in the executive categories, which typically encompasses the highest level jobs in the organization. This is roughly over 15 percentage points higher than their representation in the professionals category, 68%, which includes jobs such as computer programming. However, other groups are represented at significantly lower rates in the executive category in the professionals category. African Americans, 2% to 5.3%. Of those in the executive category high tech, about 80% are men and 20% are women. Within the overall private sector, 71% are executive positions are men and 29% are women. So I'm not going to read too much into this, but it's as Dr. Phoenix was saying, and Johnny Blaze was saying, that a lot of these students, especially Black, as the article was saying, they are not being prepared when they come out of these sectors, and they burn out pretty quickly, or they wait until the very last minute and hit that hit that fire alarm and expect somebody to come help at the last minute. Anybody have anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, I do. I do just want to do a quick apology to Jesus. Wasn't trying to sound condescending, brother. I was just merely trying to highlight the fact that it's a very different experience when you go through one of these major, Big Ten, 4-year institution. Very different environment, very different culture that's going on there. And so the Black students that I have seen that were successful at these kinds of, in these schools, were students who were best able to adjust to those cultures.
Mhm.
And so they did it whichever way they found out. So I just want to say that. So I do apologize if I came off as condescending. I don't have nothing more to add other than that pretty much highlights what I've been saying. So
yeah, I would say that I think these statistics and a lot of these ideas of underrepresentation of African Americans, minorities in these tech fields, I think it really comes from a bit of a historical lack of focus within our community. We really don't focus. Well, at least when I was growing up, we really didn't focus on a lot of tech related things. I mean, a lot of it was, rap, basketball, where we're heavily, represented in those type of fields, or entertainment in general. We just haven't, and we never really had, and still even today, we haven't really promoted or really highlighted the Blacks in tech within our community. And I think that that's been a direct result that we see today. Like, yeah, there aren't going to be a lot of us that are in these particular fields because we never really had a focus in our community on these fields. Where if you talk to a lot of those high executives or a lot of individuals who are in these particular fields, like white guys, they could name their first computer. They can name what they did on their first computer. They can name programming in BASIC and C when when certain revisions have been coming out. Like, I just don't think that our community has focused upon it, and that's been a direct result of what we see in those particular numbers today.
Those are very good points. Gabe. I'm glad you brought them up because a lot of it is connected to social status, right? The nerd, the well-educated brother, the well-spoken brother, the well-read brother. He's not, he doesn't have the cool factor. And I think Joseph C. Phillip wrote a book called Talks Like a White Boy. He talks about that in the first chapter. And so there's a disconnect between Black male achievement and in the academic space versus Black female achievement, as well as post-academia, right? Post-secondary school. You see brothers like Robert F. Smith or Byron Allen, they move differently than, let's say, DMX or Young Jeezy. And so the community doesn't seem to respect them in that regard. They don't hold them in high regards at all. In fact, there's a complete disconnect between how they see each other. And it's not just a class thing, it's a culture issue as well. So it leaves a lot of Black people underprepared. Like you said, basketball becomes a focus. Well, that's because a pair of Jordans or a pair of sneakers is actually about, much cheaper than buying a laptop or going to a summer camp. It's just that way. But, if you look at the public spending on a football field can cost $20 million in an urban city. And no one, people in these neighborhoods don't even understand where their tax dollars are going. So if they really knew all of these things, man, I think you might have a different perspective. Who else trying to get in?
Oh, no, I wanted to follow up. When I was just contracting in California, I was in Oakland, so I attended a lot of the Black tech meetups out there, and I got the sentiment talking to a couple of brothers and sisters who were in technology, working for some of the bigger companies. To your point earlier, they were the nerds, geek, and kind of lone wolves of the community. So they're in tech right now, and they have no plans on coming back to the community. None. I think they're living their lives. They're having a good time. But when it comes back to circling back around and coming back to the community and to create infrastructure for what you're talking about, a lot of from what I've seen, they have no interest. Rarely do I meet brothers like yourself who are having these type of conversations, who are open to go back and mentor and help, join organizations, put money towards something. But the brothers I know who are currently in the game, they're doing their thing. I don't think it's a good or bad thing. That's just my observation.
Well, I would say this much too. We did. I don't know if you remember, Mike, but about 3 months back, we did a whole. There was a discussion, a hangout we did where we talked about Ronald E. McNair and how I was a McNair scholar. Those programs are typically that program is only available at four-year institutions because they fit into the TRIO programs. Maybe Johnny Blaze might be familiar with that. It's part of one of the 7 programs of the TRIO. And that program specifically is designed to get Black people into these STEM-related fields, and more importantly, get them to move on to get to PhD programs.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm one of these days I'll send you guys I'll email you guys the information, but I'll lay out the entire application process, how it worked. But how I got that was because of relationships that I forged in undergrad with professors and students. And it was really a student. It was a sister. It was one of the girls in my nursing program with me. She was from Gambia, but she did a project on HIV. And in fact, on HIV and stuff like that. And when I saw a project, I asked her about it, and she told me about the program. And then my mentor was there as well, and she said, "Oh well, yeah, you'll be a great candidate for this program." And so that led me into that program, and then it led me to a bunch of other stuff. But I say this to say, which is what I meant about the networking comment earlier, which is that the early bird gets the worm here. And that the whole thing about the introvertedness, I don't think it. I do think there is some truth to what Gabe is saying. I do believe, however, though, it's not really a case of necessarily introvertedness. I think you could just replace it with pride. That's what I honestly believe.
No.
Was that?
No, I don't agree, but it's cool.
Well, I mean, again, you were the one that made the comment earlier. I'm just simply
No.
responding to the fact that it does take a very particular skill set to get through these undergraduate institutions. And I'm saying that not being introverted is also part of that as well.
Can I proffer another perspective?
Yeah, go ahead.
Gabe, you want to say something first? I don't want to cut you off.
No, you good. You had your hand up for.
Okay, so what I'm gonna say is, can I offer this? Maybe it's under Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? I think when it comes to some of these STEM programs, like these, I mean, when you and Gabe can attest to this, when you're in an engineering program and you got homework, one problem can take you all night long, and you might not even figure it out. It might be a set of 5, 10 questions, and you're working on that one problem all night long. I think a lot of us, the reason why I've always said that, it'd probably be impossible for there to have been a Black Elon Musk or a Black Mark Zuckerberg, is because under Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we're not there yet. Everybody, these guys have their basic common needs met. They have the luxury of being in school, being able to just do all these extracurricular things. I think us as brothers, sometimes I can just think about back to my time, and you got so many other things you got to worry about. You trying to figure out how you're gonna pay rent. You got to keep some money in your pocket. Your car's breaking down. All these other things. I think that's a big problem for a lot of brothers. Because that's why a lot of people ended up dropping out. Is just trying to manage the time that's going to take, the resource that you have to invest in these programs. I know Dr. Phoenix and I, when we talk, he talked about, well, we're going to have to make a sacrifice, but a lot of us aren't just. I mean, it's very hard to see the forest from the trees when you're trying to you're sitting in class, but you got all these other things going on. I think that's a big deal. The financial part, the economic part of just trying to manage when you're in some of these in these institutions.
Well, that's what Dr. Phoenix was referring to earlier. He said, think about you're 17, 18 years old, and you have the weight of the world on your shoulders because
Yeah,
you're
and I agree with him on that. I
healthy,
agree with that.
right? Okay.
I
Well,
agree on that.
that was exactly what I've said in past discussions and panels that we've talked about this issue. In fact, what's this? Dr. T. Hassan Johnson just put out a video earlier today, and he had a number of brothers that are psychologists, and
Yeah.
I think one brother was a theologian. I listened to that. That video perfectly surmises exactly what happens.
And I know the part you're talking about.
That
That said something
everything
about
that I've been
17
saying, yeah, everything I've been saying for months, they damn near said it word for word.
Yeah.
And
Yes,
again, like I've said, and I said this earlier too, that is the problem. That financial burden you're talking about, that's not put on black females normally. That is typically put on black males. You have to be the savior of the family. You're our last hope. If you go down, the entire damn ship goes down. And that is an unfair burden to put on black males.
you know,
When you're
it's funny.
17, 18 years old, and then you're expected to perform at this very high level, which is what you need to do to survive these programs.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny you
That's
say
been my
that.
entire point from the beginning. And I think that's a lot of where that whole introvertedness comes from. That was my whole point from the very beginning. And that's why I responded to Gabe in the way that I did.
Yeah, and this goes back to the discussion that was had on the Prophet of Thought. Are blacks competing in America? I'm looking at this map right here, and it shows that in terms of poverty, Wisconsin has one of the highest rates of poverty in the country. 30%.
Man, how many times I don't know how many times I've talked about, man, I've done free health. I just got an invite to go to Kenosha in February. I just got an invite to go talk to brothers about prostate cancer. I look, I do a lot of stuff offline because I don't really talk about these things. But I will say this much. I get a lot of these invites all the time to go into homeless shelters, to do free health screenings for brothers, everything from high blood pressure to basic vision screening. I do a lot of stuff, and I do this stuff, like I said, on my own. I never ask for money. But again, Wisconsin, the problem in Wisconsin is that we talk about the wealth gap. You can blatantly see it in Wisconsin. There's no bandage on it. You can see it. If you're black in Wisconsin, you live in one of the most dilapidated parts, if not the most dilapidated part of town. Period. Bar none.
And it's cold.
Oh yeah, that's why they had, at one point, and you guys can Google this, but at one point, Milwaukee used to lead this country in evictions. I've been telling everybody for the longest time, go read a book called Evicted. I had to read it in my nursing program. In my third semester, I had to read it as part of my public health course. Had to go read it because the eviction crisis was so severe in Wisconsin. We're talking about people that had 10, 15, 20 goddamn evictions.
I read a statistic somewhere that in Milwaukee,
It was so many evictions in Milwaukee alone that they had to put a moratorium on.
I read a statistic somewhere in Milwaukee a while back that they had the highest unemployment rate amongst black males. That one out of
it's about
50%. They said it was 50%.
It's higher than that. It's higher than that.
I heard it was 65%.
It is extremely high, and that's kind of where. And like I said before, that's kind of where I like a couple of the brothers that I picked up in the last year or so that I mentor. They come from some of the worst parts of Milwaukee, and they're in college now, but they're both pretty damn near straight A students. They're both sitting around 3.7, 3.8. So I mean, they're very good in that regard. But again, I have to teach. There's a lot of things I have to teach them that when I was that age, I didn't have. But because I'm older, I can give them that knowledge that I picked up over the years through trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that was kind of where, and one of the things I talked to them about is about not being afraid to ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't wait until you're damn near about to fail your damn physiology class before you go to that professor or come to me and say, okay, hey doc, I need help. That's it. that is, again, like I said, that is essentially why I responded the way I did, because I see this too much, and I'm right in the middle of what we call everything that happens in Black society among Black males. I'm writing the episode.
Dr. Phoenix, your mic is breaking up. We can't really understand you.
Now?
We can hear you now.
Yeah. I'm just saying the reason I responded the way I did is because I'm right in the epicenter of it. So, again, I see this all the time. And I know what it's like when you got to chase a lot of these young students around, just so you can help them be successful in college. And it does get somewhat aggravating after a while. So
Yeah.
Dr. T. Hassan Johnson, he was referencing that that podcast, the Onyx Report, is real good. He said that today, because I listened to it, he said that he polled his class, a class of freshmen. And he says the cohort ranges from anywhere from 17 to 20. And he said that the BWs had this expectation that the males needed to earn at least 5 figures at that age just to deal with them. And like I'm sure Dr. Phoenix heard the same thing, and he was just mentioning how crazy he thought that was, that these are just young men starting out, yet the expectation that just to even I guess the bar of entry, just to even
Just saying,
reasons,
your mic broke up just a second ago.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
We can hear you now. Repeat what you said.
Dr. Phoenix was referencing the Onyx Report.
Yep.
And in it, I was saying that he had Dr. T. John Johnson had polled his class. And when he had taken the poll, the BWs they had this expectation that the males needed to earn at least 5 figures at that age, in that cohort, that 17 to 20-year-old males needed to earn a certain amount of money, at least. And he said, he quoted like 5 figures, that in order for them to consider them, I guess, potential mates. And he was making how crazy he thought that was. And that kind of what leads a lot of dudes into going down the wrong path. I'm not saying that's an excuse or whatever, but these are just some of the things that when we talk about why it's hard for guys to stay in school, or just to sit down and you got all these expectations on you. You need to have this, you need to have that, you need to have a car. I remember back in the day, rims was a big deal. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that because they want instant gratification, right? They want this sort of ready-made man without actually preparing the boy to be the man.
But they're not even worthy of that.
Yeah, but we're the only group that actually proposed this sort of aspect of life that is unrealistic. When I see BWs get with WMs, they don't have these expectations of them.
Look, I
think they think they already have it.
Wisconsin. Maybe you should talk to King Sigma, because he's from Wisconsin. But I don't know if anyone's familiar, but this is like the swirling capital here in the Midwest, that in Minnesota. And I will tell you, just from what I've observed, everything that Dr. T. Hassan and the rest of those brothers that were speaking with him on that panel were saying, every last bit of it is true. And I've seen that, obviously, but again, this is why for me, my major push is to try to get more brothers to go be scientists and stuff like that. I deliberately push brothers into STEM. I don't even tell brothers you gotta go do healthcare. I just say you really need to think about a career, and here are some fields you should consider. Mm-hmm. Some industries. Just kind of look at what's going on here. If you need to talk to somebody in these fields, let me know. I'll let you. I'll get you in contact with some folks. But I say that to say, again, I think a lot of what happens is because a lot of these brothers have never really ever had their humanity, and I have really ever had their humanity just validated. Mm-hmm. And so you do see that level of introvertedness, because in many ways, I think for a lot of brothers in particular, they just feel like nobody just don't give a damn anyway, so I might as well just keep my mouth shut.
Well, you don't want to look like the face of failure, right?
Yeah.
Uphold that sort of macho bravado.
You don't want to be the angry black guy.
Yeah, I'm the big dick on campus, and then look at me. That sort of perspective until they really until it's time to do a capstone or to do your thesis, and then you kind of funk that. So
what I've seen coming out of my environment, because I'm coming from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, so everything was, I still got family in the game. Mm-hmm. Everything you guys are talking about in those environments, that's weakness where I'm from. Like, you get caught up like that, to open up, to reach out for help, Those are like, but you come out of that environment and you enter that college environment and you're still in survivor mode.
Mm-hmm.
Don't trust nobody. Don't talk to nobody. Keep to yourself. Keep it low, right?
Yeah.
And it's difficult to make that transition if you haven't been in a loving environment. That's what I've noticed in dealing with some of the brothers I've worked with, because I come from there, so I know what that is when I see it.
Mm-hmm.
And they're really reluctant to trust me when I'm helping. When I'm trying to help. It's a level of trust I need to get with them first, and usually takes about 6 months to a year, man. But I know what it is.
Yeah, I would concur with that. And again, I think that really comes back to having that part of you that's not a black man, but that's just a human, validated. And again, because that poll that he also asked these brothers, like, have you ever had a list for these women? And they said no, but all the women had lists for them, for what they wanted from them, what they expected, XYZ. And so again, when you've never had that your humanity validated, that's where you get some of these, these really maladaptive behaviors, if you will.
Yep.
I just, like I said, I fundamentally believe that, you do, if you had the patience, and believe me, I'm not the most patient person, but I do give a lot of brothers patience, but I typically work with brothers that, they've demonstrated some capability that they can get the work done. Because my goal is to get them to a certain point, and then I give them the game, I show them where the opportunities are at, and then one of the things I always tell them, I'm not around you most of the time. You're in school, talk to those professors, get in those professors' faces. You might need them if you're thinking about going to graduate school one day. You're probably going to need them to write your letter of recommendation. You really need to get to know this. This is why this whole idea of earlier about this sort of introvertedness, it's kind of a catch-22, especially for brothers.
Mm-hmm.
Nope.
Let me go to Gabe because he had his hand up.
Nope. No, I was saying, I think that first, nope. And second, I think that there's another thing that I think is an issue with, I guess, individuals kind of getting into, Black African Americans getting into certain tech fields, is the motivation at times.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're kind of, at times, especially in the hood, like we kind of bred to go after the bag, go after the bread, get the money, type of thing, and I've meant I've kind of talked to a lot of kind of career transitioners, individuals who are trying to come into engineering or trying to come into cybersecurity. And that's really been the primary motivation. And I'm like, you don't want to make a difference in the field. You don't want to increase your skill set. You don't want to, add something to the organization, something to that. And like, nah, I'm just trying to get to the money. I'm like, dog, like you're really not going to be that successful if that's your primary.
But Gabe, that's real for everybody.
That's a problem.
My bad.
I think that's a problem, because when I focused on the money, I got the money, but I wasn't getting the experience that I desired to go forward in my career. When I changed that focus into something different, I'm like, hey, I really want to be a strong asset to the point where I'm almost irreplaceable to this organization. I want to build up my skill set, build up my capability to work in diverse environments, right? I want to be able to do so much, and not the money followed once.
What
the
are you talking about, Gabe?
Yeah, dude.
What you mean? What am I talking about?
Nah, I'm just saying. Hey, I ain't saying nothing because I don't have the hand up button or whatever. But
what's up,
come
then?
on, man. Come on, man. I'm just saying, bro.
Yeah,
the
that's what I'm
skills
saying,
come
Gabe.
with the money, though. The skills come with the money.
Gabe,
Everything that you're saying comes with the money. So if you're chasing the money, the skills and all that's gonna be there regardless.
Nope.
Okay.
That's not what I've experienced. I mean, you can have whatever type of response you want to it, but I'm just speaking from my own personal.
I mean, I'm not trying to be rude to you, bro. But
I mean, you are, but it's cool.
Just kind of. No, hold on. Nah, don't take it that way, bro.
He's not. I don't think he's being rude.
It just sounds weird, bro, to what you're saying, bro, because
and I'm not trying. I'm trying to come across the right way, bro, without disrespecting or anything.
Okay.
But it don't that bro, that don't make sense, bro, because the skills and everything is gonna come with the money. If you're chasing the money, you obviously have to chase the skills as well, which is what I've done in throughout my career. I've chased the money as well as the skills. It forced me to chase certifications. It forced me to learn how to actually use this technology and move forward in the field. So that's
Yeah, I'm
all
just
I'm
saying,
saying, bro.
I've had a very different experience than that. There's been
Again,
times
you
where
take your
wait,
personal
let me finish.
experience
Hey,
and
let me
apply
just
it to the group.
let me respond to the brother. Let me respond to the brother. I've had the experience where I would take certain roles that would pay more money, but it would not progress me in my field to the desire that I wanted to go. There's contract roles that pay. I mean, there was a period. I mean, I don't want to put numbers out there exactly, but it was a lot of money that would pretty much corner me into a particular area where it would kind of regress my skill set, if that makes sense. And maybe you haven't experienced it, and that's probably why it kind of sounds weird to you.
Okay,
But
I see it
I
when you
know
say
that
it
once
that
I
way.
switched, well, you weren't trying to. I mean, it's a difference between asking me what did I mean by it, and you saying that sound weird or no.
Well, no, I can see where Josh is coming from, and I'll say this, because Gabe, you've talked about on the what's that Hall of Game channel about some of the investments that you've had and stuff like that. So you're doing well for yourself. But I think where Josh is coming from, you can't tell dudes that have been busted and disgusted, and they finally finish, get that degree, and they want to, you know, telling them not to. That sounds like some social justice warrior shit. Now I get what you're saying. No. But I get what you're saying.
But go
I see
ahead.
what you're saying. But at a certain point, you made a certain amount of money to where now you can focus on other things. Again, I talk
No,
about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. When you're just coming out, like you said, you got everybody's expecting this of you. You're driving this old ass bucket car, and you're just like, you're gonna go after money, and that's why I say, I mean, that's how you. In fact, that's how you get most brothers motivated when they
let me
see
give you a
you.
better example
Okay.
of what I'm talking about. So I volunteer for certain organizations. So for the state of Michigan, I volunteer for an organization called MIC3, stand for Michigan Cyber Civilian Corps. This is a volunteer organization where pretty much you're committing your time to this organization in the event that a state agency or some type of state organization, if they have some type of cybersecurity event, they're calling you and you out to come and be the hands on the keyboard to respond with digital forensics and incident response for this organization. This is a voluntary organization. I don't get paid for this, right? So doing something, right, that helps to contribute to the community of the industry that I'm in, that isn't paid. I'm not going after the bread here. It allowed me to pivot and focus in on my current role. So doing
Okay,
something
but what were you making at the time? I'm not. Go ahead.
less. I was making less.
You were making less, but you weren't. It was still. You were still at a certain level. You weren't coming off
No,
of student loans just in college and stuff like that. I mean, people are going to chase the money. It is what it is. I mean,
no,
they have.
but that's what I'm saying is the problem. When you chase the money only and don't look at strategy, positioning, looking for certain experiences that will help you down the line, you won't get to the point where you want to be.
Yeah,
I mean,
And Gabe,
I think both Josh and Gabe are making very fair points, and I know exactly what both of them are talking about. We all work in IT, so I understand what both of them are saying. I want to make sure that we get the last couple of comments, and then we can move on to the last piece of the article.
Sure.
yeah, I'm gonna back Gabe up a little bit. I'm having the same experience currently with somebody. They want to go one direction because of the money, but they're more acclimated for another direction. And so after talking to them for a week, they decided to go the direction that they were good at versus the one they were chasing the money for. Is that what you're talking about, Gabe? In that direction?
To some
Like
degree, yeah.
something that you have
Like doing things that will like position you, but that isn't necessarily a money output. is what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
something that you're gonna have a long-term interest in that you can go a career with. So that I'm trying to push him in that direction because I know he'll get the money eventually, but he's pretty good at the thing I'm talking about. Like I'm trying to push him into front-end development versus going. He wants to do product. He wants to be an analyst. I'm like, bro, you go to front-end development because I think that's what you're good at.
Mhm.
Look, man, I need some dudes need that cash first, though. I mean, certain point. I mean, I'm listening to you guys.
Keep on doing that then. I mean, hey.
I'm listening to you guys, and I'm seeing what y'all are saying, but I see I understand what you're saying, Gabe. I understand the point you're coming from, but like you can't tell somebody, hey, don't follow the money. Like,
no, I can.
Money will motivate. I mean, because it will motivate you to do more, and it takes you to a different level on that pyramid, to where now you can focus on helping out and doing other things.
I mean,
Well,
I
would say this much. While I do understand what Gabe is saying, I think Gabe is kind of going from A to Z because he's not understanding why are these young black males, why are they thinking that way in the first place? That goes back to me mentioning the Dr. T. Hassan Johnson's Onyx. It pretty much highlights the crux of the black male experience and why they're so interested in chasing the bag. They're chasing the bag not just for their own, financial gain. In most parts, it has little to do with their financial gain. A lot of times, it has a lot to do with, I got to go save my mama, and it's gonna give me these girls.
Look, exactly. I'm looking at Cocaine Kills.
Really what it comes down to.
I mean, chasing the money will get girls that look like her. That's it. Like, that's why guys are chasing the money. Like, no, I know, but still, I mean, people are saying,
I mean, plenty of NBA players, plenty of NBA players, plenty of famous people have went down that road, and look where they at now.
Well, but I just read that article a couple days ago about the brother that started the engineering, the STEM program that was a high school basketball, that was a college basketball prospect. Ended up with a baby at 18. Why? And he admitted in the article that playing college athletes, playing sports got me the girls. Even he acknowledged. And they're only there because they're only hoping that you're gonna go pro one day.
Telling brothers not to chase the money is disingenuous.
It is the fact. And what happens is that a lot of people don't take that type of advice, and they miss out on opportunities that would land them at a better position money-wise than if they went for the money first.
Yeah, I gotta back up Gabe on that.
I mean, y'all can do whatever y'all listen. I'm not saying everybody has to do what I'm saying. I'm just saying one thing that I've seen and I've recognized, and I've seen brothers pretty much pigeonhole themselves, put themselves in a corner financially because they were just chasing money and they weren't looking to contribute to their long-term strategy of a career.
Well,
Gabe,
when you're first starting out, when you get to a certain point, yes. But when you're first starting out, no, it's different.
Hey, Darkside has his hand up. He's had his hand up for 20 minutes now. Let's go, Darkside.
Yeah. What's up, everybody?
What's going on, man?
I guess my question for Gabe is like, how can you pigeonhole yourself? Like, if you could get into that position, why can't you? Because I mean, you got to advance to get to those positions. How are you pigeonholing yourself? Like,
no, what he's saying in a nutshell is that you may get into a network engineer's role, but you're never going to get out. You're never going to be a senior. You're never going to be a manager. You're never going to be anything. You're just going to be that and that only.
Yeah, but
also in the contracting work, a lot of times organizations speak to one another. They know about certain individuals who are pretty much going from place to place to place, just chasing the money, right? I'm sure you've seen that too, Mike. Like, people can get blacklisted for like pushing up. Hey, I was making $50 an hour. Oh, I'm going to this organization and I'm going to $70 an hour. And then organizations at times, they can get tired of that type of stuff.
Legally, they're not supposed to talk to each other about your salaries and things like that.
But they do.
There are certain ways of how they communicate with each other. Ixnay on the salary A of Gabe A. That's
Yeah. Do you know that most millennials have 3 jobs within 1 year? In the they've done a poll, and it's not just because I thought it was just me. But no, most millennials have had more than one job in a 365 day span. Like that's a lot of people do that. Job hopping is very everybody's a mercenary, especially in this economy.
Well, they're
No,
not
People as a mercenary.
mercenary. They're not mercenary.
Everybody's not.
Yeah, they're job promiscuous, man. They just
Yeah.
like they're
Hey,
relationships. They
look, hey,
kind of move on. And
No,
swipe.
Hey,
but
hey,
but but
Gabe,
but but
hey,
but, 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 go- but going back to what they were saying earlier, Mike and Gabe, the industry changes every 3 months. For me, I'm not a good mentor if I'm going to set up my mentees for failure. I want them to take I want them to go after like fundamentals that they can pivot on quickly to kind of grow into whatever direction they want to go into. I can throw them at a high paying job that's hot now and it may not be hot in 2 years. They might get stuck. So
Yeah, even perfect example about military roles, right? We know that government IT roles don't pay the same thing as the public sector, right? I mean the private sector. So, but individuals take that cut initially, right? Especially in engineering and tech roles. Sometimes people take that cut in order for one, they can get their education paid for. They can gain a lot of experience in leadership roles within government roles, even though they're not making the same thing that their peers and their colleagues might be making. So that's another example, right? You're not necessarily going after the money initially, but you can go after the experience. You can go after your education being paid for. You can go after being connected to so many individuals in leadership positions within government. And you can transition that into government contracting, which will eventually get you up to many of those. So it's so many examples that I think that you brothers might be getting lost in the
Actually, you pretty
wording.
much just said what Josh and I just said.
yeah, I get what you. Oh, go ahead.
You just said pretty much what Josh and I said a couple days ago on the panel about government
I
contracts.
mean,
We just
yeah,
said the
because
exact
I was going.
But you,
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up. I mean, I think it was the
Engineering.
wording. I think it was the wording that kind
Yeah,
of
that's
threw
what I'm
me
saying.
off. But and I wanted to apologize to you right fast as well.
No,
I
it's
didn't
all
mean to
good.
come off in any type of way. But I mean, that's just how I get. I kind of get hyped sometimes. But
No, it's cool. Same here. All of brothers.
yeah, but no, I totally agree with you on the contract side. Because I've actually dealt with that personally. I've seen people jump contracts just trying to chase the money, and they get a bad rap on them because of that, just chasing the money. You know what I'm saying? I've seen guys get sent home, for that reason. And I mean, so I totally agree with you on that, and that's kind of all I wanted to say. Y'all go
Yeah,
ahead.
let me finish this last article and then we'll just open it up for discussion because I think the focus of tonight was to challenge the debate topic from yesterday on the profit of thought that blacks are competing in America. We'll finish it up with this article. All right, this one is from BET. Black Google engineer says Silicon Valley tech giants only hire the whitest Black candidates. Bria Sullivan first entered the tech world when there was just one Droid and one iPhone. She knew tech was on the brink of taking over the world and wanted to ensure a secure future for herself professionally. Now, as one of the small percentage of Black women working in tech and even fewer working at Google, Sullivan is speaking out about her experience at the company she currently works for and other tech giants she's worked for in the past. This is my problem. I feel like they hire the whitest Black candidate. The Chino Hills, California native told Mogulum in a recent podcast, they hire someone who's exactly like them, but Black. It feels very obvious, Sullivan said, adding how the Black community falls for it a lot of the times. We cheer on, yes, it's really great that the person is there. While small achievements are positive, Sullivan wants to see bigger changes at the core of tech culture. I feel like actually put someone in a position where they are running an organization, she suggested, providing the example like all of Google Maps is run by a Black person or something like that. I mean, you have a Black person that heads diversity, she continued. Okay, thanks. I have someone who can empathize with me, but at the end of the day, they work for you. Sullivan's outspokenness is due to support from her current team and manager. She says, I can say any radical thing I want or check someone and I'm not reprimanded for it, or I haven't really had to do that. at least on my immediate team, which Sullivan proudly described as one of the most diverse teams at Google. Try that if you are a Black male, especially if you're muscular. We have 2 Black interns. On top of that, we have 3 Black engineers on our team, one of which, a Black woman, is one of the leads, she revealed. All of that happened just because my manager did that on purpose. It doesn't happen by accident. Sullivan also points out that just as Silicon Valley has to change, so do Black and brown families that focus on sports and entertainment for the children's future instead of industries like tech. That's what Gabe was referring to earlier. I think we need to start glorifying this lifestyle, she said, of the tech industry, because it is a very stable lifestyle. She points out that not everyone is an entrepreneur or a professional basketball player or even a successful rapper. So Gabe was pointing out before. But I think everyone has the capacity to learn how to code. We all have the computers. Your phone is a computer, she said. I just feel like it's a no-brainer to at least have the knowledge, because even the knowledge in the non-tech field, everything going to be tech enabled at some point. Sullivan is taking the lead on her own accord by teaching a course focused on helping non-technical startup founders hire technical talent better. She knew that outside of being candid about her experience in Silicon Valley and as a Black woman in tech, she would have to pay it forward with the knowledge and experience she brings. I think a lot of the decisions made in Silicon Valley are cop-outs, Sullivan said. I feel like they are patches to a real solution. I eventually grew more comfortable using challenging moments to educate my coworkers. I never stopped feeling the burden of being Black at Google, the unnamed author added. And the more intensive comments weighed on me, the less safe I felt here and the less capable I was of being the best self at work or myself at all. So that's what Dr. Phoenix was referring to, the sort of weight on the monkey on the back of most Black people, especially Black males. I think this is a dope article. I do find it, well, I'm not going to go into it right now, but I do find it interesting that she's able to speak out and just feel so confident about it. Try that if you're a Black male in these workplaces. Try that.
Shoot.
Be blacklisted to all hell.
Literally. You have the police removing you up out of there.
Yeah.
Funny thing is, if her brother was dating her, she wouldn't be Black enough though. Anyways,
I read this article a couple months ago. I think it was about a month or two ago, this article.
we covered it before, but I wanted to make sure I put emphasis behind the idea that Blacks are competing in this country, and that's not nearly as accurate as some people would like to think in these debates.
I think a lot of what happens is that Black folks as a whole, I mean, we do have sort of these narrow, myopic ideologies that as a collective we tend to be adherent to, and so we never see the long game. We only see the short game. And I think again, that's why I tell folks all the time, like for example, like mentees that I have, I tell them all the time that you have to be invested in this. If you're going to do whatever it is you do, healthcare, whether you're medicine, nursing, PA, whatever, even other STEM related careers. If you're not willing to go all the way in those careers, I don't think you need to be considering, because it should always be an option for you. Even now, you're entering into an environment where even bachelor's degrees aren't even cut.
Right.
And
right.
so I tell all of them, I tell every single person that I come across, that I advise, that I talk with, that especially for the brothers, I tell the brothers outright, you need to be thinking about a doctor. I just tell them outright. I said, no, there's and to what Gabe was saying a few moments ago, he's right in that regard. Because again, if you're someone pursuing a doctorate, and he should know this given what his wife is currently doing, yeah, you ain't making no money. And so there's going to be a few years where you're not going to be making money, and there are things that are going on that yeah, you might be poor, you might be eating some ramen noodles or whatever the case, but there will be a return on that investment in the long term. And and so that's one thing I do try to encourage, for a lot of young brothers, that you do have to be willing to go all the way, whatever it is you do.
Anyone else have anything you want to add to this? Outside of her looks, 'cause I know a couple of y'all thirst trapping out there.
Who's thirst trapping? I don't.
That's Ejisa out here. Thirst trapping.
Who said that? Was that Gabe? Was that Gabe cracking the joke?
That's Gabe saying what Ejisa was just doing.
You feel like the light skins.
Cocaine.
Yeah, I think her name is what? Marijuana Kells right here.
Kush Kells.
Yeah. What's going on, fam? You have anything
What's
to add?
going on, man? No, I'm still over at the shop, man. I'm just listening in.
All right, man. All right. Yeah, so the discussion that happened last night on The Prophet of Thought, are Blacks competing in America? From a fourth industrial standpoint, not really seeing it based on the articles that we just covered. One last site I'll go to right here. I was kind of browsing my mouse cursor over this. Wisconsin has one of the highest poverty rates for Black people in America right now, even higher, well, not higher than Mississippi, but it's basically the Mississippi of the North. You look at Minnesota, also has a similar poverty rate. Chicago is even much lower in comparison. We can go to Ohio. We see similar poverty rates for Blacks. PA is 25, and they're all over 20%. Mississippi, 31%, Louisiana, 30%, Arkansas, 31%. Oklahoma, 30%. Maybe that's why Kevin Samuels took off from there.
Does that take into account the so is it poverty based upon the cost of living for that state?
It just says poverty. So the federal poverty line would say, I think if you don't reach $9,000 annually or something like that, or $17,000 annually per household, depending on how many people are within that household, you are at risk of poverty. Anything less than that is extreme poverty. 26% in Indiana, Ohio, 28%. I didn't even know people lived in West Virginia. Maybe ABL can give us some tips on that. 26%. Kentucky is 29%. I'm not seeing all of this killing it, man.
Your boy Randy Moss is from West Virginia.
Yeah, I wonder if the Ku Klux Klan gave his family Christmas gifts and stuff like that. Said sweet things to him, like they did ABL.
These Great Lakes states right here, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Michigan, Indiana. These are states that actually have some of the most booming industries related to tech and healthcare and so on and so forth. I mean, especially like Illinois and Minnesota specifically. In fact, most people who go to schools in Wisconsin, they tend to leave Wisconsin and go to either Minnesota or Illinois. Mm-hmm. So I mean, because Wisconsin has a problem now where they can't retain. They have a hard time retaining young educated people, because they either go south to Chicago or go north to Minnesota. Mm-hmm. So, I can certainly see why you see these numbers, and yeah. Wisconsin's like opioid capital too.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I think I was saying this, I was talking about this, I can't remember when, but I was talking about this a little while ago, where in Wisconsin, the opioid epidemic is so bad here, where they actually have first responders. So you have EMS, they actually ride around with Narcan, which is the opioid reversal agent. Mm-hmm. And so they ride around with Narcan. So they got basically EMTs and paramedics riding around, because there's a high likelihood that you're going to get called out to an overdose.
Crazy.
Yeah. So
yeah. Yeah, but anywhere that has a high Black concentration has a high poverty rate as well. I'm not seeing this sort of killing America. They're competing in America. They're just rubbing elbows. Maybe in the NBA and the NFL, they're killing it there. They're competing heavily there. But I'm looking at all these numbers and looking at these articles. Blacks dropping out of STEM at high rates, the highest rates. AI, African American workers could be badly hit by automation. Is there a solution?
The funny thing about
each other.
The ironic thing about Wisconsin, if you look at where the Black population is concentrated in Wisconsin, believe it or not, is for the most part, it's concentrated generally in Milwaukee. That's where the highest concentration of Black people are. They're in Madison. You'll find a couple here and there in Green Bay, maybe some in Appleton or something like that. But for the most part, the majority of the Black population in Wisconsin is concentrated right in Milwaukee. So, they're not terribly spread out through the state, but yet, they're only about 5, maybe 6% of population, if even that. And, you see such endemic levels of poverty.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I understand people are pro-Black and, they like to, toot the, play their little, xylophones or whatever it is that they play, tambourines and stuff like that with the incense burning. But, we have to be realistic about when we have these conversations. The fourth industrial revolution is here. Fourth industrialized technologies are in place. We covered an article on Monday about IoT, some of the hottest IoT companies and products coming out. Black people are not part of that discussion. It's just one of those things that we're not being realistic when we have these discussions and these debates. It's sad because some of the people who are campaigning for this and cheering for this, they're under the impression that if there's one Black person working at Google, then they're killing it. In reality, these people are depressed at these jobs, man. They're sitting in the corner, having lunch by themselves.
Well, because you're the only nigga in the room. That's why. That's literally what's happening. And that, I've talked about this so many times, especially in the healthcare space. Ain't no damn Black. I don't give a damn how many Black women run around calling themselves physicians and nurses. They ain't there like that. They're really not.
Mm-hmm.
You're very spread out. Here in Wisconsin, shit, it ain't happening. I've been saying this for the longest time, and I think it is rather disingenuous to put out information like that gives this impression that somehow Black people are making it in this country when we really not. All the data says otherwise. You go to the CDC, says otherwise. You go to the BLS, you go to the economic data, you go to the labor data. They're all saying otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
You pick your government industry that keeps data, it says otherwise. And so, I just think I think it's very disingenuous, and it certainly does Black society a disservice to say that is the case when, again, the article you just read with the young lady. Of course you're going to be depressed. Ain't nobody around you that looks like you can talk to. You can't really get along with the mayonnaise brigade.
Yeah.
You got to make sure you got to make sure you got your damn Teflon on, man, because you got knives probably aimed at your back.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's true. Very true.
That's a little excessive, don't you think?
No.
Oh, man, coup d'etats are real. I've seen it myself. Coup d'etats are real.
That would be a no.
I've always been like the only quote unquote one. And as long as you have, at least from my experience, as long as I've had positive relationships with my coworkers, even though, I didn't get the jokes, I don't go to the Christmas parties, I don't do all that stuff. I'm there to work. I'm not there to be nobody's friend. So, I don't know.
You're not a team player then, Mr. Gabe?
Oh, no, I'm
you sound kind of threatening there, sir. Sound kind of threatening.
Yeah, I might have to go to HR about this.
I don't know. Again, if you become a bit indispensable, it's a bit difficult for them to really have issue with you if you're not doing anything.
All they got.
I invite Gabe out to lunch. He never wants to go out to drinks with us. He makes me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Don't.
They can totally turn you not wanting to work with anyone, just wanting to be to yourself. You're antisocial.
Yeah, and involuntary separation could be coming soon.
Yeah.
You guys, it's just different. I don't know. I don't know.
His bag was just so tight around his head. I just felt
Those are.
so
I mean, you guys are speaking of speculation and possibilities. They could do this, they couldn't do that.
I've experienced.
I haven't experienced. Well, you've experienced it. I'm saying I have.
No. I talk to people who also go through these similar experiences. Here's my thing. I'm just giving you what I've experienced, and the audience can take it for what it is. Maybe they have your experience, Gabe, but maybe they had mine.
True. Hey, and I guess I'm just giving mine. That's it. Yeah. I'm just saying, like, it could be. I'm not talking to Becky in the corner. So I'm depressed. I don't get along with my team because they don't give jokes that are entertaining to me. I mean, hey, whatever.
Mile, keep it real. You're from 8 Mile. You like Obi Trice.
I don't like Obi Trice. I'm from Brightmo, but I'm not from the 8 Mile. 8 Mile really isn't even that. You
don't like Eminem, dude? What do you mean, dude? You don't like Eminem, man? Eminem the shit, man.
Stand fan. Let me hit this one real quick. World Economic Forum again. Revolutionary technologies will drive African prosperity. This is why right now we're at a tipping point in Africa's development. We're hurtling headlong into the fourth industrial revolution, which has the potential to turbocharge the socioeconomic development of the entire African continent. We've got the youngest continent in the world, with 60% of Africa's 1.25 billion people under the age of 25. If we make the right decisions in the next few years, we could pave a bold new path for African prosperity. In Africa, fourth industrial revolution's potential is limitless. Its technologies like artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things offer a new vision of economic growth, innovation, development, and human well-being. It can solve a host of business and societal challenges, from providing better healthcare and basic services to creating more efficient governments and helping businesses become intelligent enterprises that drive growth and prosperity. Our governments and institutions have a massive opportunity to start using AI and digital platforms to do life-changing things like delivering safe drinking water to our people, improving the quality and reach of education, and even giving people the ability to identify themselves, to be able to access government grants, open bank accounts, and vote in elections. We know Africa suffers from a massive infrastructure deficit. But the beauty of the fourth industrial revolution's technologies is that you don't need big legacy systems and programs in place to start rolling them out. We are already seeing numerous case studies and examples of how developing countries can move quickly to new digital approaches that can transform public service delivery in critical areas like farming, healthcare, and education. Dr. Phoenix and I had a Black healthcare talk a couple weeks ago about telemedicine and telehealth. So Africans are looking at this from a different perspective than Black Americans, but according to some people within certain circles, they'll tell you that Blacks are making it in America or they're competing in America. I beg to differ. These articles beg to differ. We can use technologies like AI to improve access to healthcare across the continent for the most vulnerable and needy communities. It can even help make diagnosis in rural areas where there are precious few doctors. And we're already seeing technology changing the face of education in countries like India, where they've launched a national teacher platform that builds capacity by allowing teachers to provide richer content while giving administrators access to data about student study patterns. Digital platforms are not only transforming teaching, but changing the way we think about learning. So that's where we are right now. This is actually, I think this is one of those one laptop per child. I think that's one of them. But stark differences between how people in the West are thinking, Black people in the West are thinking, and people on the continent. So both melanated, two different worlds, two different ways of thought. And their hair is natural. This is FYI. Anybody have any other thoughts on this?
Yeah, man, the continent is wide open. Continent is wide open, and I mean, all these fields. Oh, what's that? But yeah, it's wide open, and I don't know, especially in the healthcare field. I'm definitely looking at some stuff to kind of transition over there, and might be definitely some opportunities over there. I'm sure in the IT and all these different fields, it's definitely exciting.
Yeah, yeah. This is I'm using this as an example that this is the way how they're thinking. We're not even having this conversation.
Yeah, I think that was what Super Triz was saying the other night on the panel. And yeah, we're it's not even that we're just like competing. It's like we're not even in the game at all. You know, and I think, you know, like I said, I think when you have conversations like that and the information put, I think it is really disingenuous because you're not doing Black people a disservice, because Black people don't understand the depth at which not only are we're just behind, but for many of us, we may never catch up. Mm-hmm. And I just, you know, yeah, I think those conversations like that are just, yeah, they're horrible. You know, especially coming from folks who are college grads themselves and know what it takes to get through these 4-year institutions. Mm-hmm. You know, I said earlier, the 4-year institution is the litmus test. It is the barometer for what's going on with young Black people. Yep. You want to see everything that's happening with young Black people, just walk on your average college campus and see exactly what's going on. Black kids that aren't even getting out of community college. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I mean,
I think the biggest
was that, Gabe? I'm sorry, what was that?
I was going to say, I think the biggest difficulty that we definitely have is a culture change. I mean, if the culture doesn't change, where we're emphasizing these particular fields of study, these particular areas to focus on, then, I mean, that's pretty much the future right there. So the culture must change in order for the African-American community to change.
Yeah, somebody has to call it out publicly, though. You know, when Bill Cosby talked about the pound cake situation, you know, people got up to him.
Oh yeah, people still mad at Bill Cosby about that.
I know they're still talking crap about this man to this day.
About that, not even about like his actual, you know, charges. People mad at him about what he said about the Black community. That's wild. I mean, hey.
I think we have to put a lot more. I think it's really more of an informational thing, man. I think we also have to put a lot more information out there. You know, a lot of stuff that I see, you know, in the Black media, if you go anywhere and where large amounts of Black people are in the Black media, Black YouTube, let's go to Black Twitter and all these different areas. You know, people are not talking about this. They're talking dumb shit.
At all.
You know, they're talking dumb shit. So at the end of the day, you know, rappers and what's important with them and all, I don't give a fuck about what Meek Mills and these other fucking people. Don't fuck them. I'm talking about, now that may be me talking about, you know, how I may see things, fair enough. But at the same time, this other information should be out here as well. Okay, if you want to have all that other stuff out there, let that stuff be out there. That's fair enough. But yet at the same time, where is all this other information about, you know, about technology, about different fields and all this? We're not talking about this. So if we put a lot more of this information out there, that's where a lot of this has got to start to begin. We got to start to change the dialogue. And not that you're going to change the whole dialogue around, but as long as you start to put that in there, where people become more and more and more aware, then it becomes more of a bigger thing. It's just like, you know, we have Silicon Harlem in Harlem. You know, that's part of the that's part of the school zone and all this. In Silicon Harlem, it's you know, it's like the Silicon Valley in Harlem. You have that. You actually have this going on. You have some exceedingly bright kids.
Who's running that, Dipset?
Run it back again, family. I didn't hear.
No, I was asking who's running Silicon Harlem? Is it Dipset?
No, it's Dame Dash, baby. What you talking about, man? Dame Dash.
Gotta be
baby.
Joel's.
but at the same time, you have you have that, but not enough people know about it. You hear about it. Not enough people know. Of course, I know something like that is not going to get very big, but this should be promoted a lot more. These kind of things have to be talked about a lot more in our community. They have to be talked about. We've proven it. Black men, black women are going to school, so we don't have a problem with looking to go to get educated. We don't have a problem with getting education. The name of the game is what we're focusing on, and we're not putting a lot of information out there.
Go
ahead.
Because I know you've been in this YouTube space for a long time, and I know you brothers been. I know certainly you brothers, at the Brain Trust have been doing this kind of stuff now for almost 2 years now.
Yeah.
And and since I've been coming on these panels, I mean, there's not a whole lot of viewership. But if I go to whatever channel and there's all manner of BS going on those channels, all manner of chicanery, you getting thousands of viewers. So I don't, this is one part question, but another part a little bit of pushback where I think you brothers have already been doing it. I'm just thinking if there's truly the will and the stomach there for black folks to really take this in, because look, I would just say, at least since I've been a part of this space, Mike has put together some great hangouts, lots of good information put out there. You guys, I mean, Mike is beating this hammer in like every, at least 3-4 times out of the week. And again, I'm not so sure if the will is really there. Maybe certainly among a small group of folks, but as a collective, I don't know, bro.
Do you think that people defeated?
I think we can do it.
Defeated or something?
Was that?
Do you think that people feel defeated?
I don't think people feel defeated. I think it's more or less people are far more willing to gravitate to that which they know. And what does most black people know? Dysfunction and chicanery.
Okay, well, let's put it like this: the Brain Trust, a year ago, maybe have 22, 23 people in the chat. Now you see double, triple that amount. Now, are we in a sector? Are we in a sector of Black YouTube where people are really going to gravitate crazily to this kind of conversation? I have 700-800 people in the chat, and we're not talking about doxing somebody or or some female, or inviting somebody to their genitals, or telling somebody they're going to meet them in a and then hit an airport somewhere and beat them down. Okay, all that whack dumb ass shit. People like listening to that. Okay, so we're not going to attract that, but yet at the same time, more people are getting attracted to it. And we're not the only channel doing this. Some other people are beginning to get into the business side and the tech side as well. So, I believe this can grow. We just have to push it a lot more. And these young kids will listen to that. They'll listen to that. We have to start to change some of the dialogue a little bit. And that's kind of where this channel and others like this are starting to are starting to make somewhat of an impact. Even though it may be small, there are quite a few people who are actually looking and are feeling, a certain kind of way, like hold on a second, these guys, they may be on to something. So that's what I'm thinking. That's what we have to really just push a lot more of. You see people, but you're talking about Asians and so forth who come over here. You go over to their countries, there are millions of them, and they got a lot of people living in the streets and living like animals. But then they come over here, the ones who are highly focused in what they're really trying to do. What they talk about, they just sit around and they talk about getting into certain fields and pushing these things. That's all they talk about when they come up. They talk about this stuff. So amongst their groups, they're talking about this.
Yeah, but they also spend 4
and
hours
that's the
a day
thing.
studying. They also spend 4 hours a day studying. That's a big difference between Black people spending about 30 to 45 minutes a day studying.
Well, if people are going to get involved in technology and people are going to get involved in STEM, you're going to see that studying is just going to be a part of it. One thing I have to say about this millennial generation that I've seen from them, especially from so many of us who are going to school, people can study. These young kids, they can study, man, and they can put together, they can aggregate a lot of information. They can put a lot together. Now it's just got to be, where do you focus that? Where is it focused? And this is, I'm not saying this is an overnight thing, but a big part of what we have to do, just like you can get kids into drugs by telling them this is the end thing to do. Literally you can get them into doing that. You can turn people sideways by telling them this is the end thing. All right. If you start to say, hey, listen, this STEM and this technology and this kind of stuff, this is kind of the end thing to do, you can literally turn people around the same way. Okay, so it works on the negative side, can work on the positive as well.
Yeah.
Look at that. I know how this thing works. We can do it. We got the people who can teach it. There are people who are getting involved in it. We have that infrastructure here in the community in which to pull this off. It's just a function of just a lot more of us just putting some type of effort on it. Yeah, if you're trying to make a lot of money, if you're trying to make a lot of money by having 1,000-2,000 people in your chat room, and you know, and you're gonna just talk strictly tech, and you're trying to super chat to death and get paid that way. That's not. This is not going to be the most successful model for that right now. But if you want to get a certain level of information out, there's going to be some other avenues. Anyway,
I was going to
go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it is important to note that the method of, or the platform to disseminate the information, it's not something that those who are in the younger generation are really using to get information in, right? You typically don't see someone, you know, anywhere between that 15 to 25-year-old, you know, age range, listening to hours, like 2-3 hours of information from a YouTube video. You typically see those individuals on Instagram, on Snapchat, on TikTok, not even Facebook these days. And it seems that a lot of social media companies, they're kind of putting a lot of information in smaller periods of dissemination. So even with like the minute, right, from your YouTube videos, a lot of people digest information in that way, or even just like Google alerts. So I do think it's important to point out that the method that the Black Brain Trust is disseminating information isn't typically the method that a lot of kids are digesting information.
And Gabe, let me push back a little bit on that, because I'm a big fan of Joe Rogan, and I see how he's influencing a lot of younger people. We had two brothers from the other night who was listening, and they called in to get advice on how to navigate a military career. So I think we're getting traction, but for those who are interested in listening, and then people maybe are following up after we have our conversations. So I think the format that we have is perfect. I don't think everybody's going to gravitate to the space. You're going to have a small percentage, but man, we can get maybe, I'm good with 2 or 3. We can get 2 or 3, we good. And then we'll have a chain reaction from there.
But I guess the conversation is about changing the culture, right? If you're looking at changing the culture, wouldn't it be important to understand how the majority of the culture is getting information, is digesting information? Yeah, sure. It's great. I'm not saying anything is bad. I'm not, you know, fighting against anything that this platform is doing. But I am saying that a lot of young people don't digest information in this manner.
No, I've been watching it, and
they're digesting information differently. I mean, they seem to be digesting information differently. I mean, you know, how people got with the information earlier on, you know, 10, 20 years ago is different now. People are on the net. They're on the web. They're looking at a lot of stuff. Contrary to popular belief, most of our boys and girls in school are going to school. All right, 4 black men, 4 black men out of 1 are actually going to college as opposed to going to prison. So these kind of things are going on. There are numbers that are showing we're very much embracing education. It's not like we're not. So I know that's part of the narrative that people run, and that you're not doing this and you're not doing that, which when you begin to look at the numbers very closely are not very true. Just like, you know, people saying, well, you know, the black man, you know, he's a terrible father and he's out there, you know, debaucherous and doing all this kind of stuff like that. When we look at the very close numbers, that actually is not very true. So when we start to look at things for what they really are, we're starting to see, you know, what the narrative is as opposed to what the truth actually is different. So we are embracing education. I think it's a function of us really putting a lot of emphasis on where we really have to, you know, go, and also help to be a part of increasing that educational infrastructure that is going to put certain kinds of people or many people on a certain path in this technology wave, and getting people to get in certain kind of fields that are going to be definitely beneficial or more beneficial for us in the future. I really think it comes down to information. It really comes down to who's pushing what. And that's what's important. You know, you get up in the morning, eat bro in the Breakfast Club and all that. What are they talking about? You know what I mean? If they were talking technology, STEM, and so forth like that, and they would have a conversation like that every now and again, that would change a lot of the dialogue instead of talking.
And you're right about that, because if they had featured more Black male honor roll students, then that might have a different effect, rather than having some trans person up there, attack black men collectively. I thought that was most disingenuous, disgusting live streams that they put up, was to have this flaming something up there attacking Black men. I couldn't understand that.
Yeah, exactly. So you have a lot of effery going on, but if that dialogue if we could change some of that dialogue, that would have an effect on, you say, culture. That would have an effect on changing culture. I mean, I look at. It was funny. I remember some years ago, I was down near Canal Street, and I was with some friends. We were at this one pool hall, and we were playing pool and stuff like that. And there were Chinese people there. It was one side of the room with some Black dudes, and the other side of the room with the Chinese. And it's funny, the women were coming over, looking at you, seeing what was going on. But yet they were playing rap music and getting live with the rap stuff and all this kind of stuff. So they were walking around. They were acting like they would, that was part of their culture as well. They were into the hip hop as well. They listen to hip hop. But what are they pushing behind closed doors? What are they really pushing? All right, hip hop is something they can listen to and rap to. I'm sure they knew of all these different rappers, but at the end of the day, what are they pushing for their career side? How are they really pushing that? So so that's the key right here. I just want to make that point.
Let me keep it techie in, and let me get Barra Born. Go ahead, keep it techie.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add to the conversation you guys were talking about, and it kind of ties back to what we were talking about earlier with the money aspect, or chasing money. I look at it this way: you can't really. It's kind of very difficult to change the culture at this point, because it's been happening for so long, and the way things are going in those areas, those urban areas. So I look at it as like what Nagon was saying when it comes to money in the hood, people chasing drugs and all that stuff, or they really chasing the money at the end of the day. And so that's why I kind of push that. I talk about my, how much money I've made in the IT career, because to me, I know when I was younger, that kind of influenced a lot of decisions that I made as well, when it comes to how much money you can make in these industries. And so I don't know, that's just my take on it, I guess. And another thing, I focus my platform on not just one demographic. And the reason I do that is so I can build up the platform to a certain level, and then start to focus and show people, okay, you can get into this. You can make the money. Like I've even talked about, when I've mentored other people, I've talked about that I've made just as much money as some of these rappers make on shows that they do once every week or whatever in a week as well. I'm doing the exact same thing that these guys that you guys look up to. I just don't have the instant gratification. You won't get that instant gratification. You have to go in and learn this stuff, and it takes time, but you can get to this level that you see on TV. You know what I'm saying? And not 100% to that point, but at a point where you can sustain yourself, and as well as, if you want to get some rims for your car or whatever, you can do that. You know what I'm saying? And so I guess that's my whole point and my whole take. That's all I want to say.
Let's go to Barraborn real quick.
Hey, can you hear me?
Put some volume on your mic, brother, please.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, brother. Go ahead.
Okay. So I agree with everything he just said for the most part, but I mean, it depends on how much, I guess, education these higher professions require, because we still have the problem of that illiteracy rate. I just wanted to, I'm on here for basically, I think I came on here before under a different name, Dream City or something like that. But in either case, I'm not exactly going to, I'm still working on the project, and I'm a little further back than, it's sort of ballooned into a whole thing. But basically, I just want to, if you guys could give me like feedback on, I think part of the problem with the fourth industrial revolution, as far as Black people are concerned, it's sort of like a step beyond the level that we're at. So a lot of people that are getting out of these colleges they don't have the mentorship that would take them into some of these higher fields. And for most people, their Black communities and stuff, Black people, they're more or less dealing with like the day-to-day type of stuff. So they get caught in these kind of smaller dead-end jobs, just trying to keep up with rent in some of these cities where we're circulated, not circulated, but where we mostly are, we're very urban heavy community. My way to kind of get around that, and if you guys would poke holes in it, that would be nice, because I'd like to solve some of these issues beforehand. But, we're very interested in entertainment as a community. It's it's
Shucking and jiving is what they call it back in the day.
Yeah, shucking and jiving. It's just kind of getting away from, but we're trying to get away from our daily reality. I'm trying to develop an app right now that is a game that kind of helps us confront that reality through getting the player to support Black-owned businesses. So,
so it's like a conscious version of GTA.
It's a conscious version of Pokemon Go.
Okay.
And it seems like, well, no, I mean, that's not exactly a bad representation per se, but I noticed that particularly in the online space, and there's a lot of, I mean, you guys kill me if I'm off base or if I'm in my own echo chamber, but it seems like I think Black guys already like things like Dragon Ball Z and anime and stuff like this sort of nerd culture, but we don't even know that it's like something else.
I don't think you're off base. I think that we're developing a VR game now, and we're leaning on the tropes from anime and cartoons from the 80s. I think the way you probably want to approach it is create something for the market and get the revenue to build companies for us would be the way I would approach it. That's the way I'm thinking about what we're doing. Because we're gonna handpick the people to run this stuff, but we want to compete globally in the market and kind of why reinvent the hamburger? Just make it better and own the restaurant would be the way I would look at it. I don't know if that makes any sense.
What's the hamburger?
The market. Fortnite is $1 billion industry currently. So get your whatever the global market is for video gaming, your content needs to be centered around that particular genre of video gaming. If you do that, so your content is not going to get the draw that you're looking for, in my personal opinion.
No, I was just going to say there needs to be a Black version of like Sesame Street that actually goes down to the early childhood level and delivers the content that way.
Something like the Reading Rainbow. I don't know.
And the recommendation is like, ideally do something that can pop, use that revenue to build that Sesame Street model that we're talking about. But the ideal is, somebody has to kind of get into a position where we can reinvest back into our community. And what's currently going on in the industry, everybody who owns these game companies and these publishing companies, they're not us. We work there, but we don't own the companies. And ideally, if we can let's make a strive to go into that direction, to own a startup, own an app, own a video game. So that way we can create infrastructure to go hire some of the younger people coming out of school. I'm aiming for that now, right? I want to go set up infrastructure, but go play in the global market when it comes to revenue. So I don't want to derail what you're doing, but I just maybe think about it on that level, maybe. But
all right. Listen, what you're saying is dead on the money. You're absolutely correct about that. One of the biggest factors that we have, the biggest problems that we have, because I was just talking with one of the guys, I won't say my banker and all that, but one of the guys who I bank with, who's top VP, he's on top of all these numbers, as far as where what are we doing with our money? If we want to really get involved in a lot of Black business, we're going to have to, shore up our institutions of lending that are Black owned banks that will for sure tend to back us up as others will not back you up. Okay. So what am I saying? Out of every $10,000, I said this before, I'm going to say it again. Out of every $10,000 that is actually deposited in the banking system daily, 10 grand, every 10 G's that's dropped in there. Only 4 of those dollars go to a Black bank. Out of $10,000, only 4 go to a Black bank. $4. Damn, that's a problem. So some of this stuff we can actually solve ourselves without having any other kind of intervention. So, in order for me to really get the business going or get you a certain type of business going, you're going to need some level of credit and capital in which to do that, and also to help to create jobs. That's what banks do. All right. So if you don't have your banking institutions working on your side and they're undercapitalized, I think a lot of all the stuff that we're talking about, to a large extent, it's going to be difficult because you're not going to have the capital. You're not going to have some of the startup capital in which to play. You have to have capital, and when you have capital, that means you can also take a very strong hand on your patents and everything else like that, all that kind of stuff that you create. A lot of us create a lot of things, but we don't control after a while because we sell out to get money to do whatever. But if you have capital in which to control your patents, and that's going to drive your technology and so forth, you can actually control a lot of what you're doing and actually create a lot more. If you're going to create jobs, you have to have a brick and mortar type company that can hire people in which to help to advance ideas and so forth. That's how that's done. We need to be doing that, and I just want to bring some hardcore reality to what we're really talking about here.
Let me
anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, let me get you Jason. He has his hand up, and then I need to read this article, and then we can close out.
No, I was just gonna say, you guys were talking about ownership. I think we don't. A lot of us don't start talking about ownership until later on. I think most of the times we're just so excited to get into the party just to get in. We're not thinking about entrepreneurship and ownership until later on down our careers, whereas everybody else is thinking about that from the back. You got to understand, like, all this talk about being a boss and owning stuff and being your own boss, that talk is relatively new.
Mm-hmm.
Got into our lexicon within the past 15 years, and we talk about it in a sexy sort of way, kind of like in a Dame Dash,
Don't please don't use that. Don't
I'm just saying that's what we do. That's how we talk about.
Yeah.
That's how we talk about when I hear people on YouTube in the Black space talk about ownership. It's something flashy, something to. It's a shibboleth to beat people over the head with. Oh, I'm a boss. I own ownership. They don't talk about the drudgery and how you have to, the long hours you have to put in and stuff like that. So,
and it's something quick. We always
something quick. Yeah,
quick.
Yeah, you're right.
It's a hustle.
Millionaire overnight.
Yeah, it's a hustle. Yeah.
Like only focusing on the bag, only focusing on the money.
But I was gonna say, Mike V, he probably needs to start naming these hangouts the IT get the bag, something with IT.
Oh man,
the IT get the bag hangout.
Get the IT bag.
Get the IT bag, yeah. Get the IT bag hangout.
You probably would get like an extra 100 just for that alone.
I know.
Easily.
After like
the primary motivation.
After the first 20 minutes, everybody's gonna drop off when he is like, "What?
Yeah.
Oh, I gotta read? No, fuck this."
Get the PC case.
Get immersed. That's what they like now. So yeah, let me read this article real quick, and then we'll close out because we're gonna go over to the Prophet of Thought. Is that correct, Dr. Phoenix?
Yeah, I'll be over there. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
All right, this one is from the World Economic Forum. Last one on the docket. Africa's future is innovation rather than industrialization. Africa has taken three significant steps in recent months on its journey to a stronger economic future. In March, the African Union launched the African Continental Free Trade Area. This landmark agreement aims to create a single market expected to generate a combined GDP of more than $3.4 trillion and benefit over 1 billion people. In April, the South African government announced the launch of a new affiliate center of the World Economic Forum's Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Very complex, like something like that. The center will act as a focal point for dialogue and cooperation on the challenges and opportunities presented by advanced, which are merging our physical, digital, and biological worlds. These include a number of tools that combined will disrupt Africa's dominant agriculture, extractive, and manufacturing industries, offering the continent an unparalleled opportunity to transform and thrive. And the World Economic Forum has just launched the Africa Growth Platform, an initiative aimed at helping startup enterprises grow and compete internationally. At least somebody's competing here tonight. With early stage entrepreneur activity 13% higher than the global average, Africa is well placed to get startups off the ground, but it also has a higher than average failure rate due to insufficient support and infrastructure. The Africa Growth Platform will bring together governments, investors, and businesses to help startups thrive and become sustainable. So these are the emerging technologies: IoT and ubiquitous link sensors. IoT stands for Internet of Things. Biotechnology, human enhancement technologies, things like wearables, Apple smartwatches and things like that, Fitbits. Satellite enablement, so cube-based satellites. We did a whole entire live stream on CubeSats. Go back to our archives.
Done a couple.
Yep. Advanced robotics, AI and quantum computing. So Africans, despite the fact that people think they're living in huts, are already talking about artificial intelligence and quantum computing. Distributed ledger technology. Africans are thinking about blockchain. 3D printing, advanced materials and nanomaterials. So they're talking about hemp-based materials used for housing and things of that nature.
Nanocarbons.
Yep, these are important steps forward because despite recent economic growth, Africa remains subject to lingering challenges, including inequality, relatively poor agricultural productivity, and significant youth unemployment. It is also about to witness a population explosion with 2.4 billion people expected to call the continent home by 2050 within our lifetime. Job creation is essential, and the fourth industrial revolution, underpinned by forward-looking trade agreements and support systems for entrepreneurs, has the potential to supply much of that demand. Africa's digital revolution, Africa has definitely grasped the promise of the fourth industrial revolution. More than 400 tech hubs have sprung up across the continent, with Lagos, Nairobi, and Cape Town emerging as internationally recognized technology centers. These cities now host thousands of startups, along with the incubators, accelerators, innovation hubs, maker spaces. We talked about this all the time: maker spaces, maker labs, technology parks, and co-working spaces that support them.
But they don't like you over there, though.
Oh,
They don't like you, though.
They don't like you, though.
Mm-hmm.
They don't like you, though.
No, they don't like you, though.
They don't like you, though.
Notable.
You're right. I don't like you. I don't like you at all. But I don't like you.
Notable successes include
African Americans. Very lazy people.
Notable successes include the mobile lending app Branch International, which recently raised $170 million in one of the largest funding rounds achieved by an African-focused startup, and $1 billion IPO for Jumia, which is Africa's version of Amazon, the largest e-commerce company on the continent and the first African tech startup to be listed on the New York Stock Exchange. Elsewhere, pockets of proactive government policy like Tunisia's Startup Act are helping foster the culture of innovation. So we got to look at this later. Let me make sure I put some emphasis behind that. Efforts like these will become increasingly important to help a hyper-connected and entrepreneurial youth population on its way to a digital future. However, with one or two exceptions, these initiatives are largely being driven at a city or enterprise level rather than at integrated national level, to Africa's detriment overall. One one illustration of this can be found in the World Economic Forum's Readiness for the Future of Production Report 2018, which analyzed countries' preparedness to capitalize on emerging technologies. Of the 25 countries addressed, 22 were classified as having a low level of readiness for the future due to the lack of necessary enabling conditions. Beyond tech platforms and innovation capacity, these include a robust institutional framework, the right skills and talent, the ability to attract global trade and investment, availability of sustainable resources, and a thriving demand environment. How Africa can grab the fourth industrial revolution opportunity, definitively tackling the digital hygiene gaps, gaining successful, actionable insights from the data glut, building new skills needed against the clock, the need for innovation ecosystem. So, this is what we've been talking about. All of these technologies are a part of fourth industrialized markets. So, if anybody is competing, it sure is not on this Western Hemisphere. So, any closing thoughts on this?
You know what?
Jumia is owned by Brazilians, right?
I thought it was owned by some French, but I don't know. I could be wrong.
Brazilian guys.
Yep. All right. Nobody else.
We said the closing thoughts on us not competing. No, we are in a position in which we can compete very, very, very quite easily. It's just a question of of putting kind of foot to ass a little bit here to make to push this. We have some very one of the running jokes we have is someone I won't mention their name, but they don't like you over there. They don't like you over there. People talking real stupid shit, but yet here's a continent that's going to be growing and it's going to be a hub of manufacturing and so forth. Yet here we are, talking about they don't like you over there, talking just dumb shit. So, and these are supposed to be, some of your more intelligent community leaders, or let's say community leaders.
Darth Vader.
To the Darth Vader on the Hangout.
No, Darth Vader's on the Hangout.
Yeah. So somebody should just mute themselves because they sounded real ill back there. But so we could really compete a lot better. But the bottom line, very simply, is we're not pushing this. We're not talking about this fourth industrial revolution. We're not even talking about what's going on in Africa. I even listened here on the manosphere where I've heard Black people, don't go over there, man. We shouldn't be over there. And you go over there, it's not going. You have people just talking crazy. I'm like, what are y'all talking about? Do we need to go over there? Are you going to go over there and things are going to happen immediately? No. But boots got to be put on the ground. People have to put some time and effort in that area, and we're gonna have to make some inroads because some of these countries have said, "Hey, listen, we are wide open to you guys coming over here and doing business with us." Mike can attest to that, and others can as well. So we do have to put you got to put some foot to ass on this, man. I mean, that's where we're at. Do we have people who are capable of going over there and doing very well? Yes, but once again, it comes down to we don't talk about that. When we look in Black YouTube, or we look in kind of the Black media altogether, in a lot of different places, I don't hear a lot of us talking about this. I hear very few of us talking about the fourth industrial revolution. I think that's a big problem. That's a big problem with this. We're not talking about this stuff. So how are we going to do it if we're not even talking about it?
Innovative ideas come from complex conversations. Ask yourself how many complex conversations is being had in the manosphere alone.
Can I make just one caveat?
Yes, sir.
Now when people talk about I love hearing your articles and stuff about Africa, but like I said, I think I said it one time, and shit is not all sweet over there in the sense that yes, we need more people that are capable of going back there.
It's not all sweet over here, fam. It ain't sweet
But
all over.
But I'm telling you, over there, it's not easy doing business.
Okay, that's fair enough. It might be all that easy to do business, but you got to go over there and do it. You over
It's
there
not
talking about
And I
Asia no
never and I
different
never
from
said I
China.
never said I never
It's
said
not
I never
Asia
said for
I just want
one.
to say this too very
China.
quickly. You
Go
also
ahead, go
sat down
ahead.
and said, "Hey, listen, Africans they don't do this, they don't do this," and then my man busted out a freaking cell phone.
Okay, and I don't want to go back
that they're
there
making over there.
back to that.
So I mean,
but
we
but
have to
Nagone,
invest. It's just
you
a
were
part
saying
of what's
stuff,
going on.
but you were saying things like you were putting words in my mouth because on a couple of hangouts after that you were saying things like I said that Africans can't do this, I can't do. That's not what
No,
I'm saying.
you said Africans don't take care of shit. They ain't gonna keep
They
shit up.
don't. Engineering cannabis is on the line right now.
Shit's just gonna go to fucking hell. That's all you're saying. That may
Engineering
be going
cannabis
over
is
there in
from the
Nigeria. All right, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be enterprise wide all over let's say Africa, because quite frankly what's going on over there in Nigeria with all the corruption and a lot of fucking up that's going on over there, it's obscene that with a country that rich and
It's
that
a reflection of the whole continent.
It's
You can go
functioning like
anywhere,
that, but it's not a reflection of
it's
the
a
whole
reflect-
continent.
Well,
All the
hold
little
on,
countries
because
operate
the
differently.
thing is, because you're right, engineering cannabis.
And I never said not to do it. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying beware that it's look.
Listen, we had O'Shea come over here one day. O'Shea came over here, and O'Shea, he's in Africa a lot. Okay.
Okay.
As far as anyone in the manosphere, he's over there more than anyone else in the manosphere. I've been there once. Okay, and I've been back, man, and it's been 9 years. So the brothers who are over there are saying, hey, listen, be careful. You got to understand how to do business well. You gotta learn the lay of the land. You gotta learn what's going on. That's absolutely true. I don't think we're talking about being unrealistic about it. But when you have people in Ghana and so forth saying, we want to see American blacks come up here and invest with us, and we're talking about from the governmental side of the fence now, who want you to get involved. All right. Mike can tell you about some of the groups he's been working with where Africans are saying that. I can understand you saying, hey, listen, be careful what's going on in the continent. There's a lot of changes going on in the continent. What was going on there 50 years ago and what's going on now is different.
You guys
I'm
talk
just saying
about
there's
a
a
lot
lot
of
of
this
things going
innovation.
on. You have to look at that.
It's not being pushed necessarily by Africans.
Africans are pushing it. It looks like Africans are talking about this, and you're saying that they're not being pushed. Where are you saying? Where are you?
I don't think, and we don't have enough time to get into all that. We have to go over there and support Dr. Phoenix on the Prophet of Thought right now. He is live. Thank you all for joining us, and please hit the like button if you can. Share the video if possible, and hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from Black Trust.
All right, thank you, Mike and team. Y'all have a good day.
All right, y'all.
All right, you guys.